And call our city council meeting to order. We appreciate all of you being here this evening and joining with us as part of our council meeting, and welcome. I've asked Councilman Ward if he'll offer our invocation to our meeting this evening, followed by Councilman Belliston leading us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Father in heaven, we are grateful to gather today in a public forum. We're grateful for those who came before us and laid the groundwork for such freedoms as we now enjoy. Grateful for these individuals, and it is our prayer that we might honor them in continually paying attention to our civic duties and our responsibilities. We pray for the proceedings of this day. We pray for those in our armed services, and we pray for those of our leaders of our city, of our state, and of our nation. This we say in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Ward and Councilman Belliston, for that. Appreciate that. We do need to excuse our mayor this evening and our city manager, Roger Carter, this evening. Both are out of town on some other assignments, so we will excuse them. Item number 1, we'll look for an approval of our agenda.
Agenda.
Motion for approval by Councilwoman Granger.
Second.
Second by Councilman Clough.
Ward, aye.
Clough, aye.
Granger, aye.
Belliston, aye.
Turek, aye. Item number 2 is our announcements. We'll first start with an introduction of our new Washington City royalty. We'll ask their advisor, Taylor Blake, if she'll come up and introduce our city royalty for this year. Oh, she's not here yet? Well, maybe we'll have the princess come up and introduce her royalty. And you'll have to get after your advisor for showing up on time.
All right, so we're sorry because Taylor won't be able to make it tonight. And I am Tessa Welch, the new Miss Washington City, and I'm really excited to be here.
Congratulations.
Thank you. This is the first attendant, Lauren Pratt. We have 2 second attendants this year because they tied to the last decimal point.
Wow.
So. Yeah, for the first time ever.
Yeah,
and so we only have the first one of them here, and this is Bailey Van Wagner. The other second attendant is Kitty Caldwell, and so we're sorry that she's not here, but we love having her in the royalty too. And then our Miss Spirit is Sydney Van Wagner.
All right.
Great. Well, congratulations. It's great to have you representing our city this year. You'll find we've already put them to work last week. They covered half of our cotton days.
My goodness, they even helped cut the ribbon and everything. We're just running all over the place. We're so grateful to have your service here. It's awesome.
So you kind of got to feel you'll do a great job. And just remember, you're always part of Washington City after this one. And the greatest part that's an honor for our city council is this isn't just a princess, but this is a scholarship. So these girls also have earned a scholarship as part of this. And so that's great that the city funds that.
Congratulations, ladies.
Okay.
So if you'll turn around so they can take a good picture, and you'll be all over the news tomorrow.
Not even worth the phone.
Great job, girls. Thank you.
Thank you.
And congratulations to those parents, proud parents that are here with you. All right, we've got, maybe I'll ask the council for any other announcements before we go into our next announcement. Council have any announcements that they need to make?
No.
Maybe just a thank you to those that headed up our Cotton Days. It was a great event last week. For all those that participated in it, thank you. But that committee that manned that did a great job, and we want to give them a great thanks from the citizens of our community as well. We'll move into our next item announcement, and that is we want to introduce this month's What We're Made Of. We do this on a monthly basis and kind of introduce and highlight members of our community and gives us a chance to get to know different members of our community. It's been a great, great experience. And so our community member that we want to highlight this month is Irene Slack. Irene is a native of Washington City, was born here a little over 90 years ago. And so, and the best part of it is she still comes over. I think it's every week. Irene can set me straight if it's not, but she mans they do the tours up to our Covington home. And so we have a great wealth of knowledge that participates and heads up those tours up there. And with that, we'll go ahead and start our what we're made of video, and then we'll bring Irene up and let you all get to know her a little better.
Washington City is only as great as those who reside here, who make it great. And this is what we are made of.
My name is Irene Prisby Slack, and I was born here in Washington, Utah in 1928. I'll be 90 in May of this year. And my mother lived to be 102, I'd like you to know, and she was quite a spunky little woman, and she was quite a worker.
Why do you love Washington City?
I love Washington City for all the fun I had here when I was growing up. We made our own fun. We built wigwams. We dug in the dirt. We went up on the stone quarry. That's where the center is, where the library is. There used to be big rocks up there, and we'd go up there and play a lot. And we'd go up on the hills. We'd go out to the Grapevine Pass and go up there and walk clear up there. We were young and little. And we'd get squash gum and come back home. We'd have a little lunch and do whatever we did. We didn't have these phones and things like the kids do now. They don't see anything. They don't see the birds. They don't see the sky. All they do is look at that.
So we know that you provide lots and lots of service to Washington City. And we really are grateful for that. But we want to know why do you provide tours of the Covington home?
Because I love it. I think, well, most of the people that are doing the tours and things, even in the museum, they don't know anything about Washington. They come up to the Covington home. I tell them all kinds of things. I tell them stories maybe sometimes I shouldn't tell. But they thank me for telling them all about and knowing what happened here in Washington.
What makes the Covington home special to you?
The Covington home, my dad and mother lived in there in 1908. My sister was born there. Mr. Turnbull owned the place, and he told them they could live there. They were just newly married, you know, and that then at that time. And people didn't have places to live, and that old house was kind of run down. And Dad and them moved in there, and some of the people had asked my dad, "How do you keep track of Suzanne?" He said, "Oh, I put a bill on there so I can find her." That house isn't as big as a city budget. It's a big house, but Mom said when she lived there, they just lived in the little kitchen in the front room. Upstairs was just a hall, you know. And I just love Washington. Washington's my hometown.
Washington City is only as great as those who reside here, who make it great. And this is what we are made of.
As you can see, Irene's a little sweetheart. So if she's here, if we'd have her come on up.
Come up, Irene.
The mayor, he felt bad he wasn't.
We might as well go down.
We want to present you all that plaque that represents what our community's made of, and great people like you that give so much to our community, and your willingness to serve and give back. And we just love that. Show me that flag. Give me a smile. We'll remind you of that and say, hey.
Well, thank you. I leave you my pen. Huh? This is Washington City. Oh, my. Thank you for all. do that.
I shake your hand, but I give you a hug all the time. It's a dangerous place to get shake your hand.
Thanks again, Irene, for all you do. We'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is our declaration of abstentions and conflicts. Any to declare this evening?
I do. Item 7C, I have some interest in a joint adjacent parcel, but I have no financial gain in the project or in this application.
Okay. Any others? Seeing none, we'll move to item 4, our consent agenda, which consists of approval of our minutes from the city council meetings of 4/24/18 and 4/25/18, and our board audit report for the month of April. Any-
I move approval of the consent agenda, including the minutes for 4/24/18 and 4/25/18, as well as the board audit report for April of this year.
We have a motion for approval by Councilman Granger,
Second.
second by Councilman Clough.
Ward, aye.
Clough, aye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, aye. Item 5, we're pleased to have Dixie Regional Medical Center here with us this evening to give us their administrator yearly update. And I'll turn that over to Mitch Cloward. Well, it's not Mitch. Mitch delegated. You see what a good leader he is.
Well, it's good to be with you again this year. My name is Steve Kaplan, and I'm the chairman of the governing board of Dixie Regional Medical Center. Would like to introduce Mitch Cloward. He's the CEO of Dixie Regional Medical Center, our administrator. And we're happy to have him here with us. Wanted to just provide an update on our 2017 statistical report and accomplishments. Oh, great. Yes, that would be wonderful. And we have extra copies if anyone in the audience would like their own copy. Okay, looking at the left panel, comparing 27 to 2016, one can see that our volumes at Dixie Regional are up, and they continue to be up in 2018, but this is a 2017 report. You can see
Half a page at a time, so he doesn't have to slide it up. Maybe he's got it.
You can see total admissions are up, including surgeries, outpatient surgeries, ER visits. The only thing that is not up, which we can't explain, is births. And imaging procedures, these are all up. There's a lower turnover rate, which is the number of new employees that leave the organization. 600 new employees hired in 2017. Total employees, 2,600. New physicians, we recruited 28 new physicians, and the medical staff totals 334 as of December 31st, 2017. Very, very active in volunteer service. And the most important line item for us as a not-for-profit hospital is the amount of charity care provided to the community, $37 million.
I was looking
Yes.
at your last year's report from 2016 and 15. In 2015, you reported 26.5 million charity care. You've almost gone up more than $10 million in charity care in 4 years to our
Yes,
community.
yes.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And this is a gift to the community by Intermountain. You know, 40 years ago, most of you know the story, but it's worth briefly repeating. 40 years ago, Intermountain Healthcare was a new healthcare system. It came about as the result of a generous donation of a network of hospitals by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And the request of the church to this new system was that they would become a model healthcare institution and that they would provide healthcare to everyone regardless of their ability to pay. They would maintain a not-for-profit status, and they would become just superb in what they do, model healthcare. So, and 40 years later in our community, we can count up the investments made here, and Intermountain has donated or put investments in place, both in terms of equipment and facilities, to to the tune of about $1 billion. And so with that terrific foundation of facility and capability, the operating margins are adequate enough to continue providing charity care. I would point out that this does not include bad debt, by the way. This is just prearranged charity care for those who were not able to pay for it. Bad debt is much, much larger than that, which is a big issue today. We understand as families are stressed by increasing healthcare costs and by growing premiums, insurance premiums, and larger and larger deductibles. So it is necessary to continue providing that charity care, and we're happy that the number is what it is. Do we have any questions about any of these statistics before we continue on? Okay. I would just say that the not-for-profit mission of Intermountain Healthcare is exceedingly important. We do not have financial investors who expect a certain return. We do not pay out dividends. Everything that is produced in the form of a small operating margin, usually 5% or less, is reinvested in the community. So one could easily say that the shareholders of Dixie Regional Medical Center are the citizens of Washington City and other communities here in Washington County. And we're happy that Intermountain Healthcare kept its promise. Let's invite up our CEO, Mitch Cloward, and we can give you a brief update on the expansion project. The project, you may recall, doubles the size of our hospital. It's a total cost of $300 million and consolidates the space on the 400 East campus, which is used for the Women and Children's Center acute rehab, cancer care, and other services onto the River Road campus, which will mean that we'll have 1 million square feet of hospital space, not including medical office space.
Excuse me. So we're adding about 600,000 square feet to our existing campus at a cost of about $300 million. So all of that construction, all the dust you see, will be settled in October of this year when we occupy all of that space. So there are 3 phases this year. We're already occupying phase 1. Phase 2 is June 5th through June 11th. And then the final phase will be in October, where we occupy all of the space. So just wanted to talk about a commitment to world-class healthcare for neurosurgical services, brain surgery, tiny babies that can fit in the palm of your hand, stroke services. The list goes on in terms of our commitment to recruit the very best physicians and caregivers here to our community to provide world-class healthcare.
Have you solved the parking problems?
Yeah, soon. There's a a parking terrace being developed just on the east side of our campus, across from our Health and Performance Center, near that black ridge. You'll see like different layers of parking there that we're gonna have our employees park out there to make parking more convenient for patients and visitors to our hospital. So that should give us adequate parking for a while, but we probably see down the road a parking structure in the future.
We are accustomed to having Terry Kane with us. She's a resident of this great city. Just by way of review, in case you some didn't know, Terry received a terrific promotion within the healthcare system, and she now has responsibility for all of the complex clinical care programs for the entire Intermountain Healthcare. And Mitch was the heir apparent, and he was one of the operations officers, but he has been very, very well trained. He has a terrific educational and leadership background, and we're very, very fortunate that he has become the CEO of the hospital. Terry still lives in the community, and she works out of the community most of the time. We're very happy to have Mitch.
I think I understand that you may be leaving for a few years.
Yes.
I just want you to know that your leadership will be missed.
Thank you. Well, my wife and I have had a a calling from the LDS Church to serve as president of the Washington, D.C. South Mission. So we'll be gone for 3 years starting next month, right when all the good stuff is happening here. And I was talking to some other mission presidents. Some have been called to the tropic, some have been called to the tundra, and we've been called to the swamp. with requests to take care of the issues there. Anyway, but on that point, we have a terrific new board chair designated, and it does constitute an upgrade, to borrow a software term. Brian Chadaz could not be here with us, but he's been serving in the past as the foundation board chair, and he's been serving on the governing board. He's very, very capable and is very committed to assisting Mitch and leading the board in a way that will really benefit all of our communities. Any other questions?
Any other questions or comments?
I got a question. You guys have a little piece of ground here in Washington City that we'd like to see you do an Instacare on. So at some point, we'd like to see if we can't get you to move forward with that.
Yeah, that's a good piece of land, and we are trying to really look at where the growth is throughout the entire county. And so we also have a piece of land out in the Little Valley, Washington Fields area, and we're looking at our demographics and statistics, and that'll be the next clinic to come online probably around 2020. But we haven't forgotten about the land here as well.
Put it on your short list.
Put it on short list.
There's a lot of growth.
A lot of growth here.
People could use it.
Yeah.
So we appreciate it.
Congratulations to this great city. You all have done a terrific job leading and planning and executing. And we are very grateful to be your partners. Washington City is an essential partner of Intermountain Healthcare, and particularly Dixie Regional Medical Center. We thank you for all that you've done, and the citizens for your support and generosity. I failed to introduce Terry Draper. She's the head of communications for Dixie Regional Medical Center and has produced all these wonderful statistics and reports. Wave, Terry. Thank you. Anything else we can do for you?
Appreciate all
I think
you
we're
do.
there. We certainly appreciate
Just
your,
build the Instacare and we're happy.
we appreciate your willingness to come and spend the evening with us. Thank you so
Our
much.
pleasure. Thank
Good luck
you
in
all.
the swamp.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, item 6, our road dedication. Consideration to approve the road dedication plat for a portion of Main Street and Brio Parkway. Sections are located on the west side of Main Street from Buena Vista going north, and at the north end of Main Street going west into Brio. Drew, you going to lead us on this one? Great.
I should make Mike do this, but I'm a kind individual, so remember that, Mr. Shaw. As stated, this is a request to have the road dedication plat for a portion of Main Street and also the east end of Brio Parkway dedicated to the city. The Public Works Department has reviewed the plat and approved the design with the condition that all improvements shall be installed or bonded for prior to the recording of this road dedication with the County Recorder's Office. Planning Commission reviewed the request at their May 2nd meeting last week. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the road dedication plat for the portions of the most northwest half of Main Street and the far east end of Brio Parkway onto you, the City Council. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have. And sorry this got loaded a little 90 degrees from what it should have, but you can kind of scroll and see the areas. This is the Parkway area that's being dedicated at that end of Main Street, and also this half that's kind of been left out here of Main Street right there at Buena Vista as it heads north, and on that west half of it is being dedicated to the city at this time.
Any questions for Drew? There's no questions. I'll look for a motion.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the road dedication plat for a portion of Main Street and Brio Parkway.
Motion for approval by Councilman Belliston.
Second that motion.
Seconded by Councilwoman Granger.
Ward, aye.
Clough, aye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, aye. Item 7, we'll move to our public hearings. This is a public hearing for consideration to approve a zone change request Z-18-05 to change from open space to R112, single-family residential lots, minimum lots located approximately 1250 east and 3400 south. Applicant Doug Dennett. Drew?
Thank you. As stated, the applicant is requesting approval to change the zoning of approximately 9.47 acres. The requested change, as stated, is from open space to the single-family residential, 12,000 square foot, or referred to as the R112 zoning designation. This request is for the purpose of developing the parcel into future residential development. Just for your information, the general plan use designation for this location is low-density residential that was recently passed by the City Council a couple of weeks back. The low-density residential carries a 3 to 4 dwelling unit per acre density ratio. And the two zones that are allowed in the low density are the R110 and the R112. The surrounding zoning to this parcel is R115 to the north and west, with R110 and C1 to the east, and then open space to the south, which is what's left of the debris basin. This particular owner and the one to the east owned more property to the south because the debris basin is set there. They're not able to develop that, and it remains an open space, just for your information. Staff has reviewed the requested zone change and finds it to conform to the general plan and the zoning ordinance. Planning Commission reviewed the request at their April 18th, 2018 meeting, in which they held a public hearing. The Planning Commission, and I apologize, I didn't get that, just noticed that on my report. The Planning Commission did, I think, unanimously recommend approval on this particular item onto you, the City Council, for the zone change from open space onto the R112. So, yeah, as I look in the minutes, it was a unanimous recommendation by the Planning Commission onto you good folks. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have on this particular zone change request.
Any questions for Drew?
Oh, no. Let's go to hearing.
You want the aerial?
Well, just to make sure we're all on the same page. And for consistency.
And Kevin's for Google Earth, huh?
Kind of just highlight it. It's this area, and I'll kind of take it out because that parcel ID box gets a little obnoxious, but it's the north half of this particular area here, and it's south of Galilee Heights and Villa Toscana subdivisions. So
It's only the north half of that. So obviously that's a property boundary line.
yeah, the debris basin, I'll just run over here and I'll just show you, because there will be 3650 road will be extended and then head off to Highway 7 eventually is at an interchange at that point. But I'll just roughly, it's at the end of that kind of a bulb right there. 3650 is going to come like this. We're talking basically from here, this square area is the area being proposed tonight.
Any other questions for Drew? If not, this is a public hearing. We will go ahead and open our public hearing. Want to remind those that are here to discuss or to be heard at our public hearings that we will only invite you to the microphone one time. So you'll make sure your thoughts are together. You don't get to come and go and debate. So we'll invite you up. Keep your thoughts and your things addressing the council. Usually what we'll do is have all the citizens that want to speak come and speak first, and then we'll allow the applicant to speak last to usually answer those questions that may have been brought up or questions of the council then have at that. So with that, we'll go ahead and open our public hearing for this one. Those that would like to speak on our zone change request Z-1805 are welcome to the microphone. Remind you just to state your name for the record as you come forward at the mic.
Hi, I'm Patty Jensen. I live in Galilee Heights. We understand this is pretty much slam dunk, but what my question is are there any parks being planned for this area? We have to go a long ways to get our kids to a park out there. So my question, are there any public areas being planned in all the great amount of building that's going out there? Pretty much my main question.
Question. Okay.
And mine actually sort of goes along with it too. Oh, I'm sorry, Amy Matsumori. Matsumori. My question along with that also is just basically infrastructure. What are we planning for schools? I notice, I mean, we have that brand new school that's right by us and it is already so overcrowded. I know you guys have already had to redo the boundaries. What are we planning if we are just having all these people coming in and coming in and coming in, and we're taking all this farmland and all this open space? What are we planning on doing for all these people that are coming in? Because those of us who already live here would like to have some open space, but we also do need to plan for those utilities and those different things that we also need. So I guess that's my question too, is what are we planning on for upcoming for that, and also for open space and parks? So
Thank you. You may want to ask the school board that same question.
Hi, my name is Linda Foley. I'm at Galilee and Tiberius. My question is, as neighbors, we're concerned that we understand they're going to be making quarter-acre lots, which is jamming a lot more people in there. And again, our concern is space and the crowd. Also, water pressure out there is already low. So taking and jamming in that many small homes, we realize the builder has it and wants to build, but we're wondering, can't they match the size of the lots that are already out there? At least that way we won't be crackerjack boxing in everybody else. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else that would like to come and discuss this? Not seeing anyone. Is the applicant here? Does he have anything that he'd like to say?
Bob Hermanson with Bush and Gudgel. Appreciate you guys' time. Oh, sorry. Bob Hermanson with Bush and Gudgel, if you guys didn't hear that. Appreciate you guys' time. A couple of those questions weren't really regarding my stuff, but just more general for the city. But if you guys have any questions for me, happy to answer those if you have any for me. We're basically just in alignment with the surrounding developments. And you can see that the way that Drew presented it on that previous map, it shows the zoning all the way around as we're going from R110 on the right on the map, or the east, to R112, which is where we're at proposing, and then R115. So we're right in the middle of all of that zoning. And so it's all the same. But if you have any questions for me.
So do you have it laid out already?
It's basically, I do have a concept layout. Yep. And then it's just connecting to that rolling ridge lane as it's shown on there. And then there is actually a concept on the other parcel as well that I'm not involved with. And our understanding is that they're ahead of us just because they've been working on them a while. And there's just a road that goes through there, and it's just a very simple layout.
The reason why I was asking, I was just curious how many lots you got in there, because I figure you're probably going to be able to get 25 or 26.
And I think that it's because of the 3650 I think I'm actually lower than that. I think I'm at 24.
24, okay.
Yep. So you're right there.
So that's 24 lots in the 9 acres. Was it 9
Correct.
acres?
Roughly. Yeah. And honestly, I don't remember for sure, but I think that's where I'm at. Yep. And there's nothing different about it. It's just like it is to the north. It looks just like that. Yep.
What plans do you have for open space or trails, and do you know anything about city parks?
We don't have anything. It's just a straight zoning, and there isn't any city parks planned to my knowledge in this area right here. And the trail system there isn't a specific trail system. It's just the normal curb and gutter and sidewalk like we have in the adjoining subdivisions.
Any other questions for our applicant?
Try to decide if there's developable property behind you. Where's the hill there?
When you say behind you mean to the east or to the south?
To the east, yeah.
To the east. My understanding is that somebody has purchased that and is looking to develop that. Like I said, I'm not involved with that, but that's my understanding.
Drew, do you know anything about the park layouts? Park
Well,
planning.
probably the closest park, and it's it's kind of just, we're working with BLM, and hopefully, as I think the council might even be aware on this particular piece right here, is our hope to someday pick up this on an RPMP south of the debris basin. Again, we can't do anything in that debris basin. It's sized for what it does, and it has a very important need in this particular area of our city. But here to the south of it a bit, this possibly could become quite a large area that I know that our leisure services is looking at for down the road a little bit.
Maybe they could give us a report on that progress in 2 weeks when we vote on this. Is that?
That's come up before. That's the parcel that's owned by the BLM, and they've got to.
Well,
You got to clear the poppy.
Well, we have to start working.
Yeah, they have to
on it
clear the poppy,
before we can get it
limit
moving.
on it, which
Yeah, I don't
they know
think
the poppy is the protected poppy is on the east side of Highway 7. So, but the BLM moves through a BLM process, and they know they've gone through here and don't have any issues with it. It just takes a while to get that off of the register for
The
them.
problem is right now it's tied together in their ownership. They would have to separate the ownership or the.
And I understand that is in the process of, yeah, they're doing the environmentals, like I say, anytime you get into those, it's a process. But I understand that process is of getting that parcel separated from the endangered species parcel across the roadway from
Maybe
it.
just a brief update.
I'll see if we can get our Parks Department to give us something.
Okay.
It'd also be interesting to see what our fallback is if that fails. I mean, where there's government entities involved. I'd just be curious to know.
I will share with you that I've had some discussions with our Parks Department about possibly utilizing those debris basins. I know that we can't do a lot in them, but we've talked about, could we plant some type of a Bermuda grass into there that, obviously we know that when the flooding happens, it's going to get silted over and covered up and some of those things. So putting a lot of infrastructure in there isn't prudent to do, but at least something so they could be utilized as a grassy area and whatnot until those floods and silts come and whatnot. So some of those discussions are being had. There's just nothing that's
When there-
solid at this
Yeah,
point.
there's some movement forward to do that in some.
And I will share that the council with the young lady that asked the questions about the parks and the trails, that this council has recognized that part of our community has been somewhat shorted on parks. And so we have been looking at parks in that area and how we can do it. That's where this BLM parcel has come up. So that has been much of a discussion area. So I know that that's on the radar. So
Mike, the drainage basin, is that in?
That's
no
Washington
longer in
City.
BLM name at all. The drainage basin itself? It is.
yeah, flood control, yeah.
That's what I meant. It's been shifted in the flood control.
No, I think it's just that we have an easement on it.
When you call it a debris basin, what's the difference between that and our retaining ponds?
Terminology.
It's not Spanish, it's mono.
The debris basin is designed to actually bring, because it's such a large open area, a lot of debris will come down with a flood, a lot of silts, a lot of organic matter will come in there. And that's, basin's built to stop that as well as the flood waters. And then after an event like that, then we have to go in and clean out the debris.
How many acres are we talking about in that debris basin? Do you have an idea?
I forget what it is. It's large.
Yeah.
It's large.
But yeah, we've actually talked, Parks Department's talked to us. We can put ball fields down in there. We can't put a permanent structure. It'd have to be out of the basin itself if we want to put restrooms, anything like that. But there's two of them. There's Stookie Basin and the Gypsum Basin that I think they have in their plan. They are currently working on their capital facilities plan for the Parks Department right now for leisure services. So
Who owns the property around the debris basin?
BLM.
BLM. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
These two owners, the one to the east of this particular piece tonight, Tuttle's owned the trust, and then the other piece, is it Mitchell's or Tuttle's? I can't remember. They own part of that, but it's just they can't use it.
Okay.
And that's these two. You can see these gray lines.
When the debris basin was put in, those private property owners did not want to sell, but there was an easement put across it with the restriction that they could never develop it, that it had to stay part of the debris basin.
Thank you.
And then the flood control authority actually has an easement that overlaps that for the structure and the basin, because it is part of our flood control prevention for the area.
So if we created some flexible use in the debris basin there, it's a possibility we could put some structures up a little higher if we could get the
Yes.
BLM to cooperate with that. So
Yes. And we've even had conversations with the BLM about the possibility of putting some kind of facility down in those.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, the point got brought up about the retention of open spaces. We've certainly had discussions about that, but I don't think we have anything on the schedule currently to revisit that and pick that topic.
Well, this
back up.
particular area will always be an open space.
Well,
of some type, whether
right.
it gets grass planted in or something like that, but it'll always, that debris basin can never be, as we just heard, can never be.
Well, I think citywide is what I was referring to in the conversations we've had in the past about making some efforts to incentivize the retention of those and before they're gone.
There's I think in the budget, there's one of the parks they're looking at maybe turning into a field in the a retention pond and see how that works, see if they can get the right grass and stuff. And so they're starting to experiment with the concept that we need to make those retention ponds large enough maybe to, or to use the ones that we have. So I know there's some work
On the parks and the pond, and I appreciate that. I think I'm kind of looking towards the whole area, and just we had a conversation almost a month ago now about just about changing some zoning to move some density from some of these areas to
I think that's something that the council's
set aside.
discussed. We've had some discussion on that, but we'll save that for another night when we're on.
Well, I appreciate that. My point is though, that I don't think we have that scheduled back on the schedule to pick that back up. I'd like to see us continue to move forward. There was a great debate and discussion about that. I don't recall ever seeing us put that on the schedule.
I'll make a note here to give to the mayor.
Thank you.
So seeing no one else come forward, I'll look for a closure of our public hearing.
So moved.
Motion for closure by Councilman Belliston.
Second.
Second, Councilman Clough.
Ward, aye.
Clough, aye.
Granger, aye.
Belliston, aye.
Turek, aye. Just for information, this will be voted on in 2 weeks. All of our public hearings for zone changes and such, we have our public hearings and then we save that vote for 2 weeks, which allows us to do more research as a council, also allows you as citizens to give us more information and whatnot from that. So just know that that vote will be heard in 2 weeks. Item 7B, public hearing for consideration to approve a zone change request Z-1806 to change from open space to R16, single-family residential, 6,000 square foot lots located at approximately 1200 North and 560 East. Applicant Sitla.
Thank you. As stated, applicants request an approval to change the zoning of approximately 4.92 acres. The requested change is from the current zoning of open space to the proposed single-family residential 6,000 square foot minimum, or the R16 as stated. The R16 request is for the purpose of developing the parcel actually into a future church site for the LDS Church. The general plan use designation for this location is civic. The surrounding zoning to this parcel is open space to the west, north, and east. And then the R16 zoning designation to the south, which is the Perry Landing subdivision. Staff reviewed the request and finds that it conforms to the general plan and the zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission reviewed this request at their April 18th, 2018 meeting where they held a public hearing. Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Z-18-06 for the zone change request from open space to the proposed single-family residential 6,000 square foot minimum, or R16 zoning designation, onto you, the City Council, and that's based on the findings in your report. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that the City Council has on this proposal.
Councils for Drew.
Yeah, just at the beginning of that, you said that it was approved unanimously, and at the end, it shows that it was a 2-3 vote.
Oh, you know what?
It was a 2-3 vote.
It probably was, and maybe
I happened to attend that, and my take on the hearing,
It was a
Planning
3-2
Commission, was that should it not be a church and revert back to regular zoning? Why is it not 12,000, which is what the homes are, instead of the 6,000?
they're 6,000.
Are they 6,000?
That's what we stated 3 or 4 or 5 times in the planning commission meeting. Perry Landing is an R1. In fact, if you want to go to your other exhibit, it shows it clearly where.
Okay, all right, then I think it was, the discussion I heard was about density and what if they're homes, but if
I kept hearing the same thing, and we tried to explain that, all of New Warm Springs and Perry Landing have always been R16. I've been here for 12 years, and they've been R16 since the day I started. So that's why they picked R16. Sitla, I talked to them, and if it would have been an R112, they would have, because they're not in it for the lots. And as it was stated by the representative of Sitla, they asked, I think one of the commissioners asked them on a 1 to 10, how firm is this going to be an LDS church? And I think he said it's a 12 or a 13, on a scale of 1 to 10. So I think contracts have been signed, that they're just waiting for, this is part of what needs to go for that transition to go through. So.
And regardless of what zone goes there, a church can go on
any.
Zone. Correct.
Any.
So,
it's just they feel more comfortable putting it on a residential, because then it fits in, our zoning better anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I found as I listened, I really didn't understand the 2 neighborhoods very well.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions for Drew?
Back on your last image there, the purple line, is that
Washington Parkway?
Yeah. And is that right against it, or is there a space between there?
No, it'll adjoin it. So it'll have the Washington Parkway on the north of the property, and then Tortoise Drive, I think.
Tortoise something. Or Tortoise Drive, whatever it is. Or Turtle.
Yeah. Tortoise Rock, that's it. Tortoise Rock Drive or street. So it'll be bordered on the north and the east by 2 city public streets.
Any other questions for Drew? If not, we will go ahead, and this is again another public hearing. We'll open it up for those that would like to come and speak to this zone change request. Again, just remind you to state your name for the record as you come forward.
My name is Dennis Robinson, and I happen to live in one of those R16 Perry Landing homes. I have an 8,400 square foot lot. So the way I read this, it says a minimum of 6,000.
Correct.
So under our new zoning, the rest of that likely will be the same zone. I worked construction 45 years and run a lot of work. And if they told me to pressure test at 50 pounds, I didn't do 80. If they told me an inch insulation, I didn't use 2. All I'm saying is if the developer wanted to, they could come in and hold that to 6,000 square foot lot, which is not very big.
That's correct.
And like you said, there's 2 people against it. I don't know if we're not slightly kind of the horse behind the wagon deal here. I don't know if there's that big of a rush for it, but anyway. I got an 8,300 square foot lot, but thank you for the better drawing. That's a lot better than what I was looking at last time. So that was just, everything's R16, so stuck with it. It looks to me like.
Well, that's, as you stated, basically what R16 means is nothing smaller than that.
Right.
They can always go larger, which obviously your lot did. I mean, it's zoned R16, but you ended up with a R110 basically because you're over 8.
Did that because the other ones didn't want to look at a place.
Yeah. But. So, and oftentimes what we see in this, not to say that this one is this way, but sometimes we see issues that have drainage and stuff. And so we'll zone them to allow a few lots to smaller, like R16s, but most of the lots are R18s or R110s. Like I say, this one sounds like it's going to be a church, but so sometimes that happens. We see that, but you're absolutely right. By zoning it, the guy could say R16 is what you're going to get, and that's what I'm going to give you. So you're absolutely right there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
My name is Dale Mendito, and I do live in Dale Mendito. I live in Perry Landing. I have noticed that St. George and Washington is like selling off pretty much everything around.
And you guys seem to be saying yes to everything.
I wish we owned all the property because we'd at least be able to bring some revenue back into this general fund, but it's private property. And
I understand, but you don't have to say yes to everything. This area is very beautiful. It should be designated an untouched park, leave it in its natural state, because there's a lot of animals that live on it. People use the trails just for walking. And just with the development that has occurred in front of Perry Landing, there's a lot of garbage that has blown into that pristine land, which my husband and I have been picking up a lot of it. I feel it's a travesty, and history will look at us today, years and years from now, and say, why did they sell off all of this beautiful land? They left nothing for the next generations down the road to look at. It's just one big house development, one big road. And once you start destroying this beautiful land, it's never going to come back. It will never be the same. If you go down to Green Springs and you see what they've done down there, they've ripped up all the little trails that were down there, and they're down by protected lands, down where the tortoises are supposed to be. That's all ripped. They've been ripping up all that. Once it's gone, it's gone. You can't bring it back.
I appreciate your concerns.
Now, hey, one thing we don't do is clap and cheer. This is not, I should have said that earlier. This isn't a sporting event. We're here to discuss and dialogue with each other. And
just a few things to add with what
clapping
was
and cheering,
said.
and that doesn't have a place here. So thank you.
All I'd like to add into that is keep in mind that there is not a gully or a ditch or a hill up there that I don't know as a kid. And many of the places where you're now living was where I put a lot of my forts and stuff as a kid. So I understand the concept of development, but I also understand the value that it's added to your life for you to be able to have space up there too. And it is a very difficult thing to weigh, but I do understand the pristine and the beauty that's up there.
My name's Dan Allen. Do I need to state where I live? Well,
Not necessarily. No,
okay.
just name's all we need.
Well, my house backs up to there. And I was at the planning meeting. And I think a lot of the concern that was raised is the fact that the church owns a couple lots in the area, and there's one just down in Brio. And so there's some uncertainty if the church will actually build on this lot versus the Brio one.
the church doesn't own the property in Brio. The Brio
Okay.
development has kind of identified the need for a church in the area.
So they put it
But
there
the
to-
church doesn't own it and the church hasn't bought it. And so the church has looked at this site and said, we want this site.
Okay.
You know, at least that's my understanding.
And like as part of the process, I know the land right next to it is open space. So if the church doesn't go there, is there a way to, it'd be preferable, you know, as the neighbors in the area to be open space if possible?
Open space for a long time in this city has been used just because there's no zoning on the ground at that point. I mean, it's kind of been a holding zone. We've been changing those open space zones to not yet zoned, I think is the
not yet
identification to
Okay.
it, but it's private land. And so
even if
it's
it was open space, it could be rezoned.
it's private
eventually.
land, so they can come in, make an
Mhm.
application, I want to rezone it, you know, industrial if they wanted to. I don't think they would, and I don't think the council would approve it, but the applicant or the owner of the property has the right to do that.
Okay. As part of the, I just add, as part of the due diligence of this, it would be nice if, I don't know if we have to see, if we could see the, you know, what certainty the church would be there. Cause I mean, I've heard it from a few sources, but I usually don't believe it until I see it. So.
And that's, as part of the council, we don't get to see that, obviously,
Right.
at this point. Usually we have to take people at their word and their honor.
Okay.
They're telling us that.
Well,
So
it's
there's
an
no,
honor
like-
at that point. It's issues that come up that may or may not
Right.
arise that are.
Yeah, they don't
foreseen
see,
or
and that's why,
unforeseen.
as has been
Yeah.
pointed out, we usually will look at it as a worst-case scenario and say, worst case, this is going to be R16. And that's kind of, at least myself, I look at it and say,
Mhm.
if nothing else, it'll be R16. And so
Right.
if something better than that happens, great. If worst case scenario, this is what it would be.
Okay.
So that kind of way.
Where it does front that Washington Parkway, if the applicant wanted to make that commercial, they could bring that application before the council and a church could go on a piece of ground that's zoned as commercial. And then that way, if the church didn't go, then the applicant had a piece of commercial ground, which is a higher value than R16. So I think what they're applying for at R16, as a worst case scenario, probably fits the neighborhood pretty well.
Okay.
So
The clarification helps.
So
Thank you.
thanks.
Also, just as a point of clarification for those that we talk about open space and whatnot, as communities, we cannot condemn private property for any other reason than roadways. It used to be we could build parks and trails, and that has actually cannot happen anymore. So we legally can't go out and tell people they cannot develop their property. We can encourage easements. We can encourage conservation groups to come in and purchase that property. And that's some of the discussion that was talked about a little earlier of how do we maybe incentivize some landowners to leave us some open space and give them densities to build more houses somewhere else, to cluster some of those concepts that are being discussed with council. But just for informational, we just can't go out and say, hey, nobody can build in here without somebody purchasing that property and helping us with that. So anyone else that would like to
But
speak?
we'd probably end up in the Supreme Court.
And we would lose.
Yeah.
Wouldn't allow them to build on it.
Yeah.
Regulatory case.
Where are we at just while people are thinking about coming up, where are we at in the process of redesignating those from open space to not yet zoned?
I think that
it's
was
a marvelous idea.
Yeah, I think that was taken as anytime the general plan is updated, that's part of the general plan
Well, that's
process,
what's
is
one of
those that are now would be deemed.
We have to
as
have the
basically yet to
general
be
plan
determined.
opened
Yeah,
in order to make that
correct.
change.
It has to be part of it.
We tried to go through, I mean, because we determined that right at the end when we updated our general plan a year ago, almost 16 months ago. So we turned over a lot and left a lot of it and will stay open space. And we did a lot of yet to be determined area as open space on our general plan amendment almost a year and a half ago. Now, we might have missed a few that we're still going to probably entertain getting rezoned, but we tried to hit at least the big portions that weren't in say, the hillside protected area or other things like that. We turned over to that yet to be determined area
So we
already.
really tried to take care of it all then, but we might have missed.
Well, it's like the piece we just did,
Yeah.
that zone change. We just held the public hearing. That was one that was kind of overlooked because it wasn't that big. It didn't stand out. So I'm not going to say all of it's done because I don't want to,
Well, so
you know,
talk to
be
me about
held in
this
that.
piece in
but
particular, because this is still
This has
open
been
space.
predetermined for quite a few years by Sitla. They came in and actually, just to help you understand this map right here, that greenish area and the piece we're talking about is this particular pink piece. It was set aside for a civic, and that's what we're, you know, even though we're going R16, but it's just because that's how the church wants the piece to be. But that green area, you can see there's quite a bit of open space that Sitla had in their master plan. That yellowish area is low density. The dark pink is medium high density for like townhomes, etc. But this was kind of pre-done by Sitla when we did our previous general plan amendment in the late 2000s, I think around 8 or 9.
Their master plan, that's essentially this concept,
Yes.
goes back to at least 2007.
Yeah. They brought that into us and we adopted that when we were doing another major overhaul, and that was 10, 11 years ago.
And it's our understanding, it's the city's understanding that they're currently going with that plan to leave those areas open space, or because they could literally come back to us at any time and change and
Sure.
ask for a change.
Sure,
on
they
that,
could. But I'm just going to give you an example of what they did in Sienna Hills, and you can see, and they have fairly well stuck to that. This is Sienna Hills right through here, and you can see they left quite a bit of green area in there. That's just how they decide. If you go through Coral Canyon and other, even though it was the private developer, but the Coral Canyon, I could slide over to it and you'll see a lot of green area, and that's just like how Sitla likes to do their developments.
And I could show you areas where the private developers tried to use every single square inch. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, props to Scylla for planning ahead and
That's why I wanted to just bring this up with all the discussion about it, just so you're aware, there's still quite a bit of open space. As you know, if you were to do it against private development that usually we see all the time, 90% versus what Sitla does for us and our communities, it's a night and day type of a thing here.
Right.
So
I think my mind is going towards folks that are purchasing into this area and looking, trying to understand the difference between the open space and maybe the turtle preserve, the absolute can't touch. And even that, again.
And that's this really green area up there.
Yeah.
A lot of that's the turtle reserve around a lot of that. And that's BLM property and also a local group that kind of manages that and is going to keep that in what it's at.
Well, I think that's why we made that effort to want to get some of that open space out, so it wasn't just confusing with the terms. Because the terms, I think we all recognize the term, open space can throw you a little. I think that's why we all made the effort to try to.
So I think we're not waiting to do it. We just may not have caught it on.
Yeah. Well, but and it sounds like this part wouldn't apply here anyways.
Correct.
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to come forward with this? Are there any questions for the developer? Any questions there? All right, I'll look for a motion to close our public hearing then.
So moved.
A motion for closure by Councilman Belliston. Second by Councilman Clough.
Ward, aye.
Clough, aye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, aye. Item 7C, this is a public hearing to consideration of a zone change request Z-1807 by amending the PCD Plan Community Development Sienna Hills, Section 1, 1.2B, 3.1A, 3.5, 3.8, and 3C, E, and 3.11, 6, and 10 for Sienna Hills. Applicant Sitla.
Now bear with this one. There's a lot going in this particular one, and I'll try to keep it as condensed as possible. I'll try to highlight at least the particular site plan things. And then as we go through in some of the verbiage, I'll probably hit those to certain paragraphs. But when I get to the signage one, I don't think I'm going to read that word for word unless the council wants to ask questions. That's 3 pages in itself. And but staff has looked it over and we're fine with the signage proposals. But moving forward, the applicant, as stated, is requesting approval to amend portions of the Sienna Hills PCD. And it specifically is directed to the site plan map, the land use legend table, which includes the densities, and then the text found in section 3.1B of the PCD project plan. So more specifically, the changes are proposed as the amendment is to update the Sienna Hills PCD site plan map, which you see before you here on the screen. Certain areas have been revised, including parcels 6, 7, 8, 17A, and 17B. The proposal is requesting to add the nightly rental overlay to neighborhoods 6, 7, and 8, which are up in the northeast corner of the project here, up toward the water tank, etc. Parcel 17A down at the south end. It gets a little grainy, so I'll try to just stay out. It's that kind of a pinkish skin tone color of 17A. The proposal is to change this one simply from a 1.2 acre neighborhood to a whopping 1.25 acre neighborhood. So they're adding half of 1/10 on the acreage for parcel 17A. Now 17B right below it is proposing to change from the park designation to the multifamily designation and carry a 22 dwelling unit per acre density ratio. The park designation will be reassigned into 2 locations within the PC development. The first will be south of the current location, south of this current 17B location, which will be built as a trailhead location consisting of a parking area and also public restrooms in conjunction with the city's Hillhole Trail at this particular area of our city. The second proposal is incorporated into neighborhood 10 up in the north area here And they're specifically going to be putting it into the 10, I think, E, which is just below 10B there. It's hard to see it because of when I get in too tight. And so the remainder of what's left over out of that park and what's not taken up by the trailhead, parking area, restrooms, etc., will be tried to be incorporated into a commercial type and park area here in 10. I think it's 10E. It will 1/2 of the acres will be devoted to the trailhead area, and the remaining 2.5 acres will be devoted into that commercial neighborhood 10 area. Also being proposed is to change the name of the roadway from the current name of Sienna Hills Parkway, which is this main road as you go through the roundabout heading to the northeast. They want to change that name from Sienna Hills Parkway to a proposed Grapevine Crossing Road North. This roadway is a loop, and the applicant is wishing to simply simplify the naming of the road through here because it does bend around. If you can follow it, I'll go to the screen real quick. You want to change this particular name as it comes and then heads back south, and then turns into Grapevine Crossing on the south end, which we're familiar with, over by Copperleaf and the villas at Sienna Hills, and then ends up back tying into Washington Parkway right below that 2A particular neighborhood, the one with the proposed Intermountain Healthcare site right there we talked about earlier tonight. So that is one of the proposed change on the road name. Also moving forward, removal of an area that is no longer a portion of the Sienna Hills Park PCD area, which is over here at the southwest corner of this roundabout. That will be removed. So here is what the current map looks like. And so then moving forward, this is the new area being removed, which is where the Terrible Herbst gas station will be coming in soon, right there on that roundabout corner. So this,
Well, and that's just a cleanup from the fact
a
that it
cleanup
wasn't
from a
owned by-
previous thing that, yeah. A deal was made between Dean Terry and the administrator of Sitley years ago, and this was kind of forgotten about and overlooked, and it was always on there, but it was owned by somebody else. And so we're just doing a cleanup of that particular one. So that's the change on the map area that's being proposed on the site plan. Now moving on, a change in section 3, specifically subsection 1.2b, the master developer requirements. The first paragraph of section 1.2.b describing the master CCNRs and the DRC shall be replaced in its entirety to read as follows. And let me think I'm going to switch over and we can follow on my report. There we're talking about right here. The master developers recorded residential CCNRs as instrument number 00999-848, but will be recording an updated version sometime in March or April of 2018. In addition, the master developer is finalizing the commercial CCNRs, which will be recorded again in March or April of this year. I don't think that's been done yet. Both residential and commercial CCNRs authorize a separate design review committee known as the DRC. It is intended that each DRC, the residential DRC for the residential parcels and the commercial DRC for the commercial parcels, will consider and act upon all proposals or plans submitted pursuant to these design guidelines. The DRC is also authorized to interpret and amend these design guidelines in a manner consistent with Section 1.2. The master CCNRs and DRC referenced throughout the document will respectively refer to the residential master CCNRs when dealing with residential parcels and the commercial master CCNRs when dealing with commercial parcels. So that is the proposed language to be changed in that particular section. Now moving forward, another change in section 3, specifically subsection 3.1.a, commercial design guidelines. The first paragraph describing the 5 commercial zones shall be replaced in its entirety to read as follows. For the purpose of imposing use restrictions on the commercial district, the declarant hereby establishes 4 zones. The first one is mixed use zone, the second commercial mixed use zone, the third commercial zone, and the fourth regional commercial zone, each classified as a zone. The purpose and intent of each zone are set forth in the design guidelines. The boundaries of each zone may be modified by the Design Review Committee or the declarant acting on its behalf when such changes want to make sure I move that. Now I lost my place.
Consistent with
Are consistent with the intent and the purpose of the design guidelines or with declarant's vision of the commercial. These zones are distinct from any other zones created by municipal ordinance and are not intended to duplicate or adhere to the boundaries of any municipal zones. Each development within the commercial district must independently comply with the applicable zoning requirements of the city. In all cases of any conflict between the requirements and restrictions set forth in this document and the requirements of any applicable city ordinance, the more restrictive requirements shall govern. So that's the proposed change there. And moving again in section 3, specifically subsection 3.1b, residential design guidelines, a new paragraph shall be added before the existing first paragraph. This new paragraph is to read as follows. The Sienna Hills Association maintains residential design guidelines, the residential design guidelines. Inasmuch as the residential design guidelines do not directly conflict with city requirements or design guidelines in this section, the residential design guidelines shall be the primary governing document for the residential homes, including multifamily units within Sienna Hills. In cases where the residential design guidelines conflict with the design guidelines in the PCD or with city requirements, the most restrictive guideline shall apply. Now moving forward again in section 3, subsection 3.5, wall design. A new paragraph shall be added before the existing first paragraph. The new paragraph is to read as follows. It is anticipated that all walls described in this section will be 6 feet tall. However, variances may be given by the DRC to allow for smaller or larger walls, pony walls, etc., at the request of the builder or the homeowner to capitalize on rear yard views. When such variances are granted by the DRC shall make a determination as to whether the non-typical wall heights would adversely affect other residents. So that's the proposed change there. In section 3, again, specifically subsection 3.8.c.e, residential colors. The sentence currently reading, white is not allowed, is to be changed to read as follows. White is not encouraged. Section 3, specifically subsection 3.11, signage. The entire section in 311 is to replace in its entirety with the following. And again, I hope you'll applaud me for not going through each of that. I hope you had a chance to read it. Staff has read it, and I'm fine with its proposals. It doesn't change too much what the current is. It just helps them with what they thought they were going to do years ago now with new things that it falls in line with what they want to move forward with. So staff is fine with the signage proposal. It basically is only affecting all the commercial areas anyway throughout.
It doesn't make for very good readers theater.
That's exactly right.
It was actually very entertaining to read during the planning commission meeting. It was definitely riveting.
Yeah.
I was at the edge of my seat.
That's why these development agreements are so much different. Incorporate count.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem was saying it incorporates the CCNR, something we don't read every time out loud and approve every time because it's just so boring. But with these bigger developments like this, that's the whole point to them. So we
I do
grant them
appreciate
their
it.
densities and everything because we expect them to have apparently no white homes sometimes. And then they're
And I
not
apologize. The planning commission, I was halfway through the sign thing and thought I shouldn't have gone into this. I should have just, because I know all my commissioners had read it too, but
Well,
so
more than that, you lost your voice.
I
Just
did.
about, yeah.
And thankfully we had some help that, scrolled through and we carried on. So we're almost there. Thank goodness we're not reading all the sign. Change in section 6, landscaping plan. This is to be replaced and read as follows. In accordance with Washington City zoning ordinance, the general landscaping plan designates general landscaping criteria. Representative designs illustrating the general intent of the landscaping are attached for review. A list of plants and materials to be used is attached. The Sienna Hills Design Review Committee may make changes to the landscaping requirements from time to time as part of its duties. Such changes do not need to go to the City Council through the city for approval. And lastly, change in section 10 to traffic analysis. An updated traffic analysis for the commercial areas shall be added and adopted to the PCD as part of this amendment. And that goes directly to Public Works, how they're going to buy off on that and accept those things as is. And I think that's been given there. So with that said, staff, let me just start out. This has a two-part recommendation. Staff recommended that the Planning Commission recommend approval of Z-1807 as presented in the staff report above for the zone change request amending portions of the Sienna Hills PCD project plan onto the City Council based on the findings and subject to the conditions below. And that was my recommendation to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission, though, had a motion made, and the Planning Commission, by a vote of 3-2, recommended approval of Z-1807 for the zone change request amending portions of the Sienna Hills PCD project plan, except for the proposal of the neighborhood 17B from park to multifamily. That was not part of the commission's motion of approval onto the City Council. So they approved everything except for the 17B by a vote of 3-2. And so with that, I will be glad to answer any questions that the council has as it relates to the proposals that are before you on the amendment to the PCD at Sienna Hills.
Any questions for Drew?
Oh, let me see here.
While you're thinking, Drew, I had one. I just picked up on that on the walls, where as I read it, it said that, and if I remember right, we have an ordinance in the city that 6 foot tall is our maximum height of a wall. And this said that they could allow a variance higher than that without
lower than that.
without coming to the city. How I guess
It's separate. This is a custom zone.
They have wall designs within the city. I mean, in this PCD that they have to be specifically built a certain way. So with that, I felt like, you know, they only gave them, I think there's 3 or 4 different options, and it's usually the developer has to do it. Now they may come and say for a particular reason. Now, you know, the concern I might have if they end up building a 10-foot wall, you know, I probably might be concerned about it, but.
well, and that's the type of thing I would get concerned about, is exactly that. If it's like, oh, we have a need to put in an 8-foot wall here. And I know that they had a sentence in there that said, well, we'll consider the views of neighbors, but that's kind of like the BLM said, we'll consider a road through here. Yeah, we consider it. The answer is no, you know, and so the term of considering doesn't, I don't like that term. So that's one question I had is that portion of that.
And one of my questions to add with his, with Councilman Turek is the concept of the residential design, like guideline, are those things set forth and articulated by the developer in this particular case? So for example, on the walls, are they the body that decides what's right or wrong, and we just sit back and watch what happens within there?
No, not they can't do that. They have, again, I'm gonna invite Aaron up to talk about why they want to do the height thing. I'm sure it's a simple explanation, but there are approved walls in Sienna Hills, period, how they're designed. You know, they have that. It's part of the plan. They can't just build any kind of wall that they want, you know, willy-nilly is the best. I love that term. You know, they can't just willy-nilly do whatever they want. They have to still follow that PC to extent. Now the height thing, I'm going to have Aaron come up and address that question on that specifically, so you know what their intent on that is. But all the rest of it is already stuff that's already approved. Again, they're tweaking some of the things that they've had problems with over the years, and that's why they're adding this particular paragraph in front of the existing here. And you know, they're just trying to tighten certain things up that they might have had issues with developers coming in on the parcels that they do sell to them, that they wanted to tighten up, etc.
How high does the wall have to be if they put a pool in?
6 foot.
Well, it's 5 foot by our city code. Has to be a minimum 5 feet, but they can go up to 6 feet on them.
So there's really, can you imagine a reason why they would put in a higher wall than the?
Well, that's why I'm going to have Aaron come. I'm sure there's some things that have happened that I'm going to let him probably, take a crack on addressing that for you.
What was the reasoning on the 2 nay votes? Was it because they didn't want to approve the overall development, or?
2 nay votes?
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure. I don't know if they didn't agree with dropping out parcel 17, because Sitla explained why they're doing it. Right now, all of us know, at least if you don't know, I'll take a 30-second shot to let you know that Area 17B right now is an old dump. It's an old landfill in the city. And there is concerns there. And we have concerns, and Sitla definitely has concerns there. And if we put a park over it and yet we have a dump under there, what about, and everybody knows what things that seep out of dumps are gases. You can go to most dumps and they have this blue flame that's burning away because it's the methane that's coming up. I think everybody has concerns. They want to take that out, but because of the cost, take all that landfill out and haul it to the current landfill is going to be quite, I'll let Aaron tell you the price on it, but that's
$2.5 million.
For the rest of
million.
the council, this was what, back in the 70s, indemnified the state trust on that landfill. So if anything comes up, the city gets stuck with the price tag on it, right?
So we have concerns with that landfill as well. So this is a proposal. Why this is coming is based upon that. It's not that they want to get rid of a park. It's because of the issues that's underneath it. And then that cost associated with it. That's why the proposal is what it is. And we're not losing the part. We're just breaking it up into two different things. So,
Drew, maybe what I could do, since we've kind of set the precedence before we bring Aaron up, is we'll open our public hearing. That way, if there's other questions brought forward, then Aaron can address, or somebody from Sitla can address everything at one time rather than up and back, which we don't want to have happen. So,
are there any other questions for me before we?
I think I'll try and keep a list up here. Aaron can keep a list too as we go forward. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and open this public hearing for consideration of a zone change request Z-1807 by amending the PCD plan community development for Sienna Hills sections 1, 1.2 B, 3.1A, 3.5, 3.8, 3C, E, 3.11, 6, and 10 for Sienna Hills. Just remind you again to state your name as you come forward. And again, we'll keep this civil and like to hear your concerns and we'll go from there.
Hi, my name is Emily Phillips, and I've sent you each an email, and I appreciate your time and response. So a lot of these people here today are with me. We're all residents of the Sienna Hills area, so I am kind of the spokesman. There may be few that come up afterward, but if you'll bear with me, I tried to make it real concise and typed it up before I came.
And we appreciate that being done, because we have some of those that everybody comes forward with the same thing, and it's like, okay, we've heard that one, we've heard that one.
Yes.
So I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'll try and be concise, but I do have some bullet points I wanted to go through. And it's Drew, right? But he's been so kind as to pull up a map that I'll be referencing. Yeah, if he can't get it, we can just do my printout. So why should the city not approve Sitla's requested zone change for parcels 6, 7, and 8 to include a nightly rental overlay? Well, first off, based on the percentages, the Coral Canyon area, as it's referred to in the general plan, already holds 80% of the city of Washington's nightly rental overlays. 4 of the 5 approved RRSTs are in Coral Ridge, that has 171 units. The Casitas at Sienna Hills has 209 units, and Ladera, that was just approved at Sienna Hills, has 66 units. And then at 1100 East, across the Parkway, Vita Sol is going to have 74 more units. So that's over 500 units that are already available as a second home that has the nightly rental overlay. And that's a 3 to 5 mile radius. I Google mapped it today. From my home in Washington Parkway to Coral Ridge is 4.3 miles. And Coral Ridge is the outlier. The rest are all right there within 1 mile radius. So parcels 6, 7, and 8 that we discussed just barely, the site map, they are proposed to have an additional 384 units. So that's almost double what we already have available in the city of Washington, but it's all in one place. Sienna Hills is a master plan community by Sitla, and it has a healthy balance of townhomes, garden homes, and medium density homes with the upcoming apartment complex and the retirement center. So please do not saturate this master plan community with more nightly rentals. It is not in the best interest of the homeowner to live and work here. Short-term rentals are actually commercialized property. They drive up the rent prices. This impedes families that are looking to rent month to month at a reasonable rate. they make it impossible for most families to live in their current neighborhoods. And as
I
they're
know you're
driven
reading
out.
off there. Do you mind if I interrupt you? I
Yes,
can let
no,
you go.
go
on
ahead.
that.
I was just trying to be precise for your
Yeah.
sakes.
So where are you getting that from that they drive up? What are you referencing?
Okay, I actually found a website that was sent to me by a neighbor. It was called keepneighborhoodsfirst.org/STR problem. So that was a website that explained.
One more time on that one.
Oh, yes, sorry, I said it really fast. keepneighborhoodsfirst.org/STR problem.
Thank you.
But actually, it's true if you think about it. If you rent out your home for the weekend, you make $300 a night. So right there, that's it. Well, if it's only 2 nights, that's $600 plus your cleaning fee. You charge $750. But for an entire month, you can only charge $1,400. So you'd want to rent it 4 weekends to make double what you make to just rent it to somebody for a month-to-month lease. So that's actually a little bit of common sense, but also reference from that website.
So what you're thinking is it actually pulls units out of the rental pool, so it drives
Yes.
lack of supply demand.
Yes.
Drives it up.
And so for those who want to rent, I mean, it's been talked about forever in the city that there's rental prices just keep going up and up and up. So actually, I pay less mortgage than my neighbor who's renting next door. So it really does affect the rental prices. Okay, this, as I'm talking about their commercialized properties, it also makes it harder to gain new move-ins because they can't afford to compete with the vacationer's budget. And therefore, we also lose a diversity that kind of gives you a good, solid community. You don't get those young college students that are renting just the 2-bedroom next door, and you don't get the retirees who are renting or buying the 4-bedroom. You kind of lose some diversity there. They're unfair to the hotel industry. They rarely follow fire and safety codes. They don't provide worker benefits or pay transient occupancy taxes. And they break some city laws with exemption from punishment because they're still in a residential area. So they can get away with different things that they couldn't if they were zoned as a hotel or commercial property. Short-term renters have no stake in the community. Zoning code laws keep hotels out of residential neighborhoods for a good reason, to offer protection from the disruptions of tourism. So all of that little spot was from that website. Washington City's own conditional use permit and short-term rental form states that the location needs to receive approval from 75% of the property owners of the individual lot within a 500-foot radius of the
That's-
short-term residential applicant.
That's if you're trying to rezone one that's already in an existing neighborhood.
Yes, but my point with that one is, how come we as homeowners within a 500-mile radius or 500-foot radius don't get a say on these ones? That's why I'm bringing
I
it
can
up.
tell you, there's not a single homeowner that's within 500 feet of this application.
And maybe that's true. If you can show me on that map, that's a wonderful.
Areas 6, 7, and 8 is not within 500 feet of any.
So it's not even of like parcel 3 or 5. I thought it was pretty close to 5.
Parcel 3 was already approved.
Oh, that's true.
Parcel 5 was already approved.
Well, isn't 6 right next to 5 though? I don't know where I put my other
Well,
map.
there's nobody that lives in 5 yet.
But it won't. Oh, okay.
It's not-
So
it's
as
not
far
yet
as
been built. What I'm saying
it's
is
not
there's
present.
not-
Oh, thank
There's not
you.
a single person or residence
Within 500 feet. Okay.
That currently exists.
Good point. I will take that back.
Well, so on your map there, though, is 5 already approved?
5 will not be.
5 is not going to be overnight rental. It's
Yeah.
just the hashed areas.
Right.
No.
Approved as a site, but not
It's
overnight
approved
rental.
as
Yeah, thank you.
subdivision. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're starting to level it right now.
So can
with
I
5.
can I ask what neighborhood you're in?
Yes, I am in Siena Heights. I'm in parcel 11. So no, I am definitely not within the 500 feet.
Okay.
But I also think it still offers some basis that the neighbors get a say in it.
No. That's
That's
fine.
the only reason I was bringing it
I
up.
was actually hoping you were in parcel 1
Yeah, I know, right?
because I was curious how things have been going in parcel 3 there.
Yeah, you know what? And there may be some people from 1 that could stand up after me and let you know how they feel about 3.
All right.
It could be some good information. The future elementary schools, another thing I brought up in my email to you guys, is how is that going to affect that? That's in parcel 4A1. So in summary, I feel like only one person directly benefits from this, and it's the developer. It does not benefit Siena Hills homeowners. I do not feel that it benefits Washington City, and it does not benefit the future homeowners that want to build and own a home in parcel 6, 7, and 8. Those looking for a vacation home, I feel, can buy one of the many already approved nightly rental properties. I don't feel like it is our job as Sienna Hills homeowners to absorb this supposed demand for the nightly rentals. I did, for numbers' sake, type up an Excel sheet that will show the percentages. Should I use this for this? I don't know how okay. So basically what I did is I just took the total number of units Sienna Hills is supposed to have built out as a total, and I also calculated how much we have built out right now and how many already exist as nightly rentals, so that we could get a feel for what that's actually doing to this area. So I don't know the easiest way. I'm going to go to the bottom. The top just lists everything that it is and the number of units, and the bottom has my percentages. Sorry. Well, I can come back. I printed 2 copies on purpose. Okay, so the total units built out in the purple is 640 units that exist right now. That includes Ladera. Current nightly rentals, which comes from the Casitas and Ladera, is 275. However, I remembered from last meeting, not every single unit in the Casitas is a nightly rental. About 30 could not be because they butt up to parcel number 1. So that could be closer to 245. So the percentages will be a little give and take. So right now, the percentage of homes that are currently offered as nightly rentals in Sienna Hills accounts for 43%. So that is a large number, in my opinion, for one master community to already have 43% 43% nightly rentals in our master community. Now, if you add in parcels 6, 7, and 8 that are proposed to have 300 and whatever, I did the math on a calculator. Thank you, 384 units. Then you're dealing with 1,024 in the yellow. So that's what's already built out plus the parcels we're discussing, 6, 7, and 8. If you make those nightly rentals, your nightly rental number goes up to 659 nightly rentals available. That would make it 64% of our neighborhood would be nightly rentals. That's huge. It could go down to 61% if we have that little bit of give and take. Okay, what if we added parcels 6, 7, and 8, but did not zone them as nightly rentals? Then we'd go down to 27%. That's a little bit of an improvement from the 43 and 38. That would definitely improve because you have a lot more of your master that is not a nightly rental. Now, to give it some perspective, and my husband said, well, they're just going to look at this number. Think of all the numbers. If you have your total built out number of everything that's proposed to be built in Sienna Hills, that's 1,736 units. If you offer parcels 6, 7, and 8 as nightly rentals, that would be 38% of our master community is nightly rentals. Does that make sense? If you zone 6, 7, and 8 as nightly rentals, the entire master, 38% is a nightly rental. To me, that's too big of a number. That's too much.
So can I ask a couple of questions?
Yes, and I hope I can answer them.
So I've got 2. One is on your single family. If we don't grant an overnight nightly rental to it, then what about the younger family that doesn't have any kids but buys a house in there and wants to play the Airbnb thing to help offset their mortgage?
In my opinion, that property exists. They've got Coral Ridge, they've got Ladera, they've got Casitas.
Well, maybe so, but
So they have places to go. Well, for instance, I bought in Sienna Hills about 10 years ago. We were in our 20s, first home, and I am one of 3 families with kids. The rest are retired. We were in definitely a different demographic, but we made the choice that we were going to be a little bit house poor to be in a really good area, and that's where we've chosen to raise our 3 kids.
The reason why I'm asking that is because my son is going to be 20 here in a couple of months, and he doesn't want to rent. He wants to own a house.
Yes.
But, for him, he could go into something to where he can Airbnb a couple of rooms. It's owner occupied. He'd be right there.
Yes.
And that would help him offset his mortgage and be able to get into a house at 20 years old that he couldn't get into otherwise.
But he could get roommates that are permanent that he can vet and can say, these guys live up to a certain standard because it's not
He could
strangers.
have roommates 30 days out of the month, and he could have Airbnbs 3 days out of the month and make the same amount.
Yeah. Yes. It's a very valid point. People want to do it. I at the planning commission, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he was sitting there. He said something online to, what about the people that want to retire here? Do they want to buy this home and rent it out and then come retire? No. People are not going to buy a condo community that's nightly rentals and then retire there. Nobody wants to live there full time. It's an investment. It's to make money. People want it for the profit.
So okay, fine. Then from that perspective, the developer has to build to a higher standard that he would have to build to otherwise. And what about the rights of any individual to go buy a piece of property and use it as they wish?
Yeah, and that's very true. But the master CCNRs.
The rights of any, we govern a lot of those things. It's not.
Well, but there are personal property. I'm just saying that if there's
Well, I mean,
personal
it
property
is.
right. I mean, there's people that argue that they ought to be able to do it anywhere in the city.
All right, let's
Right.
let
So-
her have the floor here. rather
Yeah,
than-
but no, for instance, though, because you bring a good point. There's a lot of property ownership, but this is a master plan community with CCNRs. We've been told from day one, no rentals. Our parcel 11 in our own Sienna Heights at Sienna Hills CCNR says no, you cannot do it. Copperleaf just switched. No nightly rentals. It's something that our master community has promoted, that it will never be allowed. So how parcel 3 and Ladera, I think it's 15, how they snuck under the radar, I have no idea because we did not get notice about those ones being approved. So I think it's a little bit different because of the CCNRs, that it is a master plan community. It was always portrayed of no. Now, if you've got someone out in the fields, if you got someone, I don't know, downtown that was like, oh, I really want to do that. Guess what? The city said no. There's already rules. The whole city said no nightly rentals. So that's just kind of too bad.
Yeah,
And
well,
if
we've
you do
given that
want it,
process, and that's the process that you were citing, is there is a process
Yeah.
for those that want to go through that.
yes,
But it's a process.
and it has to be that way. So if you don't have any more questions for me, I hate to waste any valuable time if there's other people that have something else. I appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
How are you with like pie charts?
I know I should have done a pie chart, right? That's what
This is-
last night I
I'm
was
giving
like,
I'm giving you an odd compliment. This is marvelous.
Yeah.
Thank you for putting this together.
well, like I said, my husband made fun of me. He's like, are you sure you want to present the percentages? But I said, hey, for me, math and numbers makes a lot of sense. And when you
Sure.
see it that way, it does help.
My wife doesn't understand why I want to be on the city council either. So.
Emily, let me
but-
again echo what
Yeah.
he is echoing too. Great presentation. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome.
Well put
Thank you for letting
together.
me take the time.
Great
But so
point.
on a
This is
more
important.
serious note, though, before you
Yeah.
leave,
Yeah.
when you're talking about no value to the community with the, and I can see your point as far as, it definitely, I mean, it's a market thing. They want this because they can charge a higher premium there.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess a little bit, and Aaron can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm guessing that they're looking at this, a part of this, and I've heard them say this, that part of what they want here is this stabilization to give a base to the commercial that they're actually putting in there by the people who will visit and come into that area.
Yeah.
And I realize that you're not going to like that, but I wonder if you could just talk about that a little bit, your perspective on that.
Okay.
idea.
So meaning how I feel about how it's not as valuable. Is that
Well,
kind of what you're getting at?
The idea of trying to help build up a commercial area by supplying it with ready-made visitors, and because Exit 13 has been a problem for us for a long time. It's been something we've wished would develop and would come about.
Yeah.
And
So my understanding with the Grapevine Crossing project is it is supposed to be a key feature for the whole city of Washington. We want to draw the citizens to that area with museum, the shops, the restaurants, places for you to play while you wait for your table to be available, things like that. In my opinion, the short-term rentals does not draw that kind of a crowd. That kind of a crowd is, hey, we're going to go to the midnight movie. And hey, we're going to drop by the McDonald's and go to the local park. And hey, our kids are going to want to go swimming. And our kids are going to want to go this and that. It's going to be me that lives in parcel 11 that's like, I need a grocery shop, I'm going to hop up here. Or it's going to be me that lives here all the time. That my husband and I say, oh, the kids would love the museum today. Let's go use the museum. I think it's your permanent residents that will find more value in that commercial property than it will be the short-term rental people that are coming down. The short-term rental people, the other thing is you hear them talking about, oh, we're going to go down to St. George. We're going to go to the Dinosaur Museum. We're going to go hiking. We're going to go to the Red Cliffs Reserve. We're going to go to Zion. They're not going to stick around necessarily in 13. Now, they might go there to grocery shop. They might be like, oh, we just hit town. Let's hit the grocery store. Let's hit Costco. Let's get all our money. You know, that's why they want to have a kitchen. They're like, oh, we'll just cook all our food. But I do not personally believe that the short-term rentals will give you enough rooftops to draw the commercial. I think those being long-term residents will actually do you more service. And what happens when the short-term rentals, the fad dies. And you've got all these people that bought in to rent them out. They're not getting renters. What happens if the economy plummets again? Those vacation homes are the first thing to get wiped off that no one's going to care about anymore. And property values will change.
Well, it reverts back to families moving into them.
And how so? Will you explain that? I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
Well, I have a second home and I have to sell it and it's not being rented, then somebody's going to buy it. It's going to be priced at a premium or a reduced price.
Okay.
It gives somebody an opportunity to have a little nicer house than they would have otherwise.
But
If it's a house or townhome or something.
But if it's in a short-term rental overlay, I wouldn't be buying that to raise my family in. I'd say, no, that's zoned for nightly rentals. That's something to make money. That's not where I want to raise my family. So I don't know that it would be. I mean, maybe somebody, yeah, and we can't honestly say. Yeah, but that happened in Coral Canyon when the economy plummeted and all those houses went for sale. Tons of people bought them and rent them out like yearly, 2 years, because they figured, oh, I have the cash flow. I'm going to invest in this real estate. But then they rented out like a regular lease and held on to it till the economy came back up, and they're popping up for sale left and right because they're like, oh, the money came back. So
There's some,
anyway.
some balance here, and I hope that we can find it as a city council, I think.
Yes.
And incidentally, I appreciated all the emails. I didn't respond to them, but I read them. And, you know, I think part of it is to understand the 4.5 million people that go to Zion and that we're sitting on the corner of that with Coral Canyon and this Pasilla property, Sienna Hills. Also to understand that up by the freeway, up tucked in that corner where parcel 8 is, there's probably not an ability to put something else on that property that might make money for the developer because it's right next to the freeway and it's clear up in the corner and it's a long ways away from the homes and things. I suspect the commercial property, if it's well developed, will attract both the tourists and the locals, and it will be a combination of those two that will help that to get off the ground and be successful, which we'd love to have. Maybe it's Zion Factories the second. I don't know what it is, but hopefully something reasonable there. So just a couple of things to consider. You know, we've had trouble attracting developers because we don't have enough housetops. But I think we have enough cars. That's kind of always been my view. There's a lot of people traveling there. So we need to develop something that's attractive to both and useful to both. And there is some land up there that Scylla has that probably isn't useful for anything but some kind of a tourist housing, simply because it's not good for anything else. It's right next to the freeway. So,
well, interesting enough, though, Coral Canyon rides right that I-15 corridor. So many of those homes are right there, and they had no problem selling without the nightly rental overlay. So I'm not against using that for properties, but I mean, I bet you 50% of my neighborhood or more is second homes. They don't live there all the time, and they don't rent them out, and they don't let other people come. Usually just their families stay.
Yeah, you may
so
notice,
they may not sell as quickly if they don't have the nightly rental overlay, but I do believe 8 would sell, especially if it's done well as a community with the pool and all the other amenities that they're saying it should have. I think that would be
the other
a
thing
draw.
to realize in Coral Canyon area is the reason that they've gone to some short-term rentals is because they couldn't make it commercially in the property.
Interesting.
So they moved into that as a commercial endeavor almost because they simply couldn't get anything commercial there to take.
Okay.
That was actually
So-
commercial zone ground.
It was.
It turned over to that new
Yeah,
complex
that
right there.
switched over. So in
Okay.
the discussion, there's maybe a balance and openness in our
Yes.
minds on both sides to what really will work for our city as best we can.
Yes, and I appreciate that. Thank you so
Mayor,
much.
Do you have any other concerns with any of the other changes in the proposal, or just basically overnight rental?
No, I was fine with all the verbiage because I've been on my HOA board and all the other stuff. So all of that was very comfortable. Thank you.
And I take it you would prefer even this to go to commercial as opposed to nightly rentals.
Honestly, yes, especially 8 and 6 and 7. Those aren't.
Oh, 6. I've walked up that canyon where 6 is. That's such a pretty spot.
Oh, it is beautiful. Yes, that's where the dinosaur tracks are, correct? So yes, I've been
It's
through
in-
there.
It's down. They're going to leave the dinosaur track open.
Yeah. No, it is. It is a beautiful area. I am not denying that. What's hard for me is since I do have a younger family and we utilize the park and the trails and all that, I just get sick of all the people that are just coming and going. They have different hours than we do, and they come and play. You're in a different state of mind when you're on vacation. And I'm not against them. I should make that clear. Nightly rentals are awesome. I just did a VRBO for Park City. I am not against it. But we've given the people nightly rentals. We have 500 units available in our city. Why do we need 384 more? We've done our fair share. Okay, thanks.
Map, the neighborhood map that you had up showed our little community in green. It showed the landfill, showed 17. I think that would be helpful if we could see that. Sure. My name's Craig Williamson. I'm the president of the board of directors of Ridgepoint Homeowners Association, which abuts the landfill 17B on our HOA's eastern edge. I represent the people in this 55 community that are standing behind me.
So is that 14A?
This is 17B.
Oh, I know
It's
you're
the
talking about
landfill, which is
17B.
currently,
You're where you reside is currently.
if you'll go down to 17B, see
over
the
here
streets
where
to it on the left?
Are you in 14A?
Oh, okay.
No, they're over
No.
here.
They're in
Okay.
They're over here where
They're in white.
where your other roads are on this side.
Great.
Right,
Thank
he's
you.
pointing.
Yeah.
That was the landfill in Washington forever. Lots of people took their daily trash and put it in the landfill, and it's since been covered over. We are adamantly opposed to the rezoning neighborhood 17B from a park to a multifamily for a variety of reasons. And taking Mr. Turek at his word, I'm not going to go over a bunch of them just to have people repeat it. And we have a number of neighbors that would like to address it. The city has made it kind of difficult for us to defend ourselves since only a handful of owners received written notification, and close to half of our members are up north where it's cool. Right now, since we are a senior community, a lot of them leave for when the warmer temperatures arrive. So we hope that does not favor the applicant Sitla over senior residents who represent such an important demographic here in the Washington and St. George areas. We moved to Ridgepoint to be part of a peaceful community, and the city's long-term zoning of 17B as a park, as it currently is something that has been important to many owners for a long time now. Our owners are especially concerned about noise of children in cars that would be brought to their back doors, literally, as well as serious traffic safety concerns for seniors in 5 different senior communities that are in this area. Jumping out onto Telegraph to go the other way when speeds are approaching 50 miles an hour in that. The adding of multifamily to that is of great concern. We are aware that the city has an agreement to indemnify Sitla for liabilities that may arise from what we don't know underground at the old landfill. But we don't feel that it's fair for the city to relieve itself of a liability by placing an unfair burden on a bunch of senior citizens who will be forced to live with the impact, but who never anticipated that to be anything but a park for many years. As president of our HOA, I asked the members of the city council
to vote against the rezoning of 17B as the planning department did, and keep that area zoned as a park. If a standard park with grass that requires watering is not possible because it presents a fuse for what might be underground, we would be fine with and we would accept an exercise park or even an athletic park that I know may have been discussed. So that's all we have, and I invite the rest of my community who wants to speak to step up.
One question, just
Yes.
for clarification, and maybe I misunderstood, that's what I'm going to ask. You mentioned that you and your neighbors don't want to have noise of children and cars, but yet you want the park there. Are you saying that the children?
Parks have a minimal impact on noise, has been our experience in looking at your nice parks and trailheads like down by Dixie Center and those kind of places. But cars, because of increased traffic, because of high density multifamily on the street, is street noise. That would be vastly increased compared to what it is now. That's our concern.
I understand. I guess the way I understood you to say it is, we don't want to be impacted by kids and cars that are coming to the park, but I'm talking in favor of the park, and so that's why I was asking for some clarification. So
right.
For my
well, we understand
clarification,
that a park with grass is possibly a serious concern because of the watering. So when I'm referring to keeping the park, we've decided that we would be in favor of an exercise park or another natural park that doesn't require the watering. We still get cars in there, but it's not like the comings and goings of 22 people per acre, or 22 homes per acre, is much heavier than the small amount that we get there at the Hellhole Trail as it is now.
So ultimately, the demographic would be a little higher with an exercise park, what you're thinking. Not
Plus
children, more an older,
right.
More mature demographic.
Plus we know that 18 is already zoned for townhomes. We know it's coming, and we don't have a problem with that. But adding to it here, we just think there's a better alternative than emptying the landfill by Sitla at a cost of $2.5 million that needs to be recovered and can't be done so with single family homes. And the high density stuff just isn't even remotely anything anybody at Ridgepoint thought could ever happen. So we kept waiting thinking of the beautiful green grass. We kept picturing, especially the people up top, that was going to be part of their view. So a 3-story building or whatever that becomes is certainly not something that we're in favor of.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Paul. We introduce Paul Bradley, who's our developer of Ridgepoint.
I'm Paul Bradley. I'm one of the original developers at Ridgepoint PUD. When I bought the property in 1992, we also looked at the property to the east of us for future expansion and actually put a dead-end road into that area. And we looked at that parcel down below, and we were told that that was going to be a park. So we've known that for 25 years that that's going to be a park, and we've also known that the landfill's been there for 25 years. So if there was something that needed to be done to mitigate that problem, they've had a lot of time to do it, and I don't know why they're waited till right now to, it's been a lot cheaper to move that stuff 20 years ago. Anyway, I'm reiterating a lot of things that Craig said about the peacefulness of our community right now and not having 20 units per acre right next door and 3-story buildings backing up, looking in our backyards. Plus it's a very serious situation with the traffic. You're adding all that additional families and traffic there. It's dangerous getting out of, especially an old guy like me, getting out onto Telegraph Street, because those guys are going at least 50 miles an hour coming down that hill. You've got to wait a long time to get out. Anyway, so I just want to give you a little background of how the community was when we originally bought it and what we expected and still like to see that happen. I'm with Craig. If we can't have a park, we can do something with an exercise park. That would work for me too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry Bybee. I live at Ridge Point also. And I've been asked to kind of address the traffic concerns there. If you go west, you have Winter Haven and Horizons West, Cherokee Springs, all of them 55 and older communities. They have petitioned the city in the past to try and get the speed limits lowered along Telegraph there, and that petition has failed. Now, I don't know what the density is for 18. I don't know what the zoning density is there, but the proposal for 17B is R22. Take 4 acres and they put 22 units per acre, 88 units. They could easily get that because they would have to build 3-story units to accommodate that, and the developer is going to want to maximize his potential and put as many as he can in there. So you take, say, even 80 more units in there, and most people have 2 cars. If they happen to have teenagers, then they've got 3 or maybe 4 cars. And then you add that to 18, whatever the density is there, and then the acreage is larger than 17B, but you add all that in there, there's no traffic light. When we came to the Planning Commission meeting several weeks ago, they talked about traffic studies that had been done up in the north end of Sienna Hills, but they never addressed any traffic analysis that had been done for Telegraph there. Now you add all that proposed change into Sienna Hills, and you add another, the 300 and some odd rentals that she talked about, then all the rest of the development, and all that funnels down the Parkway onto Telegraph.
Well, so at some point there will be a light on that corner, and traffic is what triggers that light. So once it gets to a certain level, that's when that light comes in, and you'll have brakes getting onto Telegraph because the light will slow the traffic down. Actually, having some additional traffic come in is going to trigger that stoplight going in place.
Yes, and we've heard that you hear that all across the state, and you see reports on the news, another accident at this area, another accident, and we not lost another life here, and then the traffic light finally comes, but it's 3, 4, 5 years down the road after all these accidents and things happen. And already right now, we find it hard to get out onto Telegraph. That's why people have been petitioning to have that speed limit slowed down.
Well, we can have our public works director address the traffic light since he's here.
Okay, that's great. I'm just saying, as far as we've been told, there's been no traffic analysis for the additional people that would come into that area. They did the traffic analysis.
That probably is true because there's been no change, so there's no need to do it.
Well,
until there's that change, then the traffic studies come in. So.
But they did a traffic analysis for the north part of Sienna Hills with those proposed changes. We were told in the Planning Commission meeting.
There was a traffic study to look at the roadway, that north roadway, but the overall density of Sienna Hills, their build out is going to be less doors than their overall density is. So they're not, it's not like they're adding doors to the overall Sienna Hills project.
I understand that.
Can I ask one question?
Okay.
How do you normally, what is your traffic pattern getting into your home? I've always wondered, do you utilize Telegraph? Do you utilize the Parkway?
Well, it depends on where we're coming from. If we come from St. George, a lot of times we're on the freeway. We come down the Parkway. Okay. Coming on the Parkway from getting on to Telegraph from the Parkway is very hard because of the slope of the hill right there. If you're in anything other than an SUV or truck, your sight line for the traffic coming from Coral Canyon is very, very poor.
You're saying turning left onto the Parkway from off of Telegraph?
No, I'm turning down the Parkway, I turn right, and then I have to immediately move over to the left to get into Ridge Point.
Okay, so the
And-
merge is the difficult portion of that.
Yeah, well, when you turn right onto Telegraph, there is a merged
Decel, yeah,
lane
there's a
right
decel,
there.
yeah, or an excel lane. Yeah.
Okay. But to move over 2 full lanes and into that center to turn into Ridge Point becomes very hard. If you're coming east on Telegraph, we start signaling when we hit Winter Haven, we start signaling and touch our brakes to let people know, because, and you can watch in your rear view mirror and you're just praying that people don't rear end you, because they keep coming at that 45 plus miles an hour, and you get right to the driveway to turn in, and by then you're down to 5 miles an hour to get turned in.
Sure.
And you are just praying that somebody doesn't come up your rear end.
I
Now,
appreciate that. I've often wondered what the traffic
Yeah.
patterns somewhat were there.
and,
mainly 'cause
and
we've had
I'm
some
one
other
of the
discussion
younger
with Jason.
ones in Ridge Point. Okay?
So
I mean-
I've had to put my foot in it a time or two going in and
Yes.
out of there. I mean, I get
Yes.
it that it's on a faster road. I just,
And so, you know,
at some point, the traffic's going to build up to the point to where a stoplight comes in is going to help the situation.
But-
And it really is.
but do we wait until we have a lot of accidents?
We have to wait until there's warrant.
It's
for
not
the
accidents.
light. It's not like
Well,
we just.
okay.
Usually
put 'em-
left-hand turn
We-
motions generally.
We
is
have
what
to
triggers
wait
that.
until the traffic builds up enough to warrant a light, or we have to reject the proposal to let another 80, 85, 90 units, whatever, go in to that area, plus whatever goes into the townhouses. That's all going to funnel out right there. So we're asking you to reject the proposal to change the zoning on that and leave it as a park. Whatever type of park this Sitla or the city or whoever wants to determine what kind of park, that's fine. But we need it left a park. Thank you.
You raised that.
Short memories, no clapping. Senior moments, okay. I'll give you one break. You had a senior moment, no more.
So are some of us.
I'm Dale Felix, also in Ridge Point. It seems like the park that at least the area that was designated as a park, and the reason for trying to change that was a concern about the emissions from the former landfill. That landfill was occupied from about 1940 to about 1950, according to some of the residents who remember having taken material to the landfill. Going through the EPA land gem, the land gem program, it turns out that the emissions from a landfill follow an exponential curve. So it goes kind of like this. It's got a half-life of about 14 or 15 years, which means that now by the time the park, if it were to be developed, would be down to 97% of anything that would be emitted has already been emitted, because it's an anaerobic decomposition, and that following the land gem models, you're down to 97% of the total emissions that would come out. I guess you could put that in perspective on the back of an envelope calculation, which I did just out of curiosity. It would be down at the time period that within 1 or 2 years, the total emissions of methane would be equivalent to about the same amount of emissions of methane emitted by the flatulence of the people living in the area around that park. And that sounds silly, but that puts in perspective what the actual emission of methane is down to. So I don't.
For me, on the landfill, it's not the methane that would be concerning. It's what would go into the groundwater and what would happen when the moisture gets in there, because our current landfill has liners, they've got
Yes.
hazardous waste taken care of. They they have all sorts of ways to mitigate any of the trash. And back in the 40s and 50s and 60s, and I think it was actually
70s and
70s.
Yeah.
Throwing oil, you know, the oil from their cars in it. They're throwing anything you can think of in the landfill.
Yeah,
And
that,
so that would be a little bit more
Yeah.
concerning.
that is a problem. Hopefully the overcover on that particular area would mitigate most of that. And that's why having a dry park to prevent water from going into that area would probably be the best use of it. Certainly, whether or not the state lands could recover their $2.5 million cost for that, it'd probably come out about even. So leaving it as a park would also come out about even if you leave it there as a dry park.
But that doesn't give those folks on the hill that green view that they bought for.
We like the running squirrels and the rabbits and the.
Okay. Artificial turf, there you go.
I'm just mainly concerned about the methane emissions and.
Yeah, and I will tell you that the dates that at least up until the late 70s, it may have even rolled into the 80s, that dump site was still being used.
That far?
Oh, yes.
Amazing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have a few pets of my own laying in there, darn it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carlene Singleton. I live in Ridge Point, number 1. I just want to say that we were told that we would have a park there all these years. From number 1 to number 10, there are 6 of us that are either widowed or single. We're on fixed incomes. We pay our taxes. And I would hope that you would not do anything to take away this part, dry park or whatever. But those of us that live along the back side there, we don't want a great big multifamily building looking into our backyards. We want to have the peace and quiet that we've always had, and we hope that you will take this as senior citizens as consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Councilman. Thank you so much. My name is Robin Erickson. I live in Ridge Point. I came down in 2006, looked around the whole entire community, and I love Washington, and I settled in Washington. Because we don't want to recap some of the stuff you've already heard, there were some original commitments to have a park there. That was really important to us. The difference that you have in our little community, in less than 1 mile, you have 5 55 and over communities. There isn't anywhere else that I know of in Washington County that has that much spread out in those groups. So they all drive slower. They're all very cautious. Some of them have been given tickets if they're in the medium strip trying to get over into the traffic area. So I don't think they're being unreasonable in some of the requests they're asking. But in that part of the community, we don't have a park. You have a dog park on 300 East. You have a park up in Sienna Hills. You have parks everywhere, and you've beautified Washington City. That's why we live here. But you're taking away the park that we all thought was, not yet, but you're looking at taking away that park that we all thought would be there, which complements the trailhead. I wish you'd change the name so I don't have to tell everybody it's called Hellhole. That doesn't, you're in Utah.
I suppose you've been down that thing, though. It's appropriately named.
I know. I know, but I do walk it. We walk it with the puppies, and we clean up after the puppies. And but it would be a nicer, different name. Yeah, but you have this 55 and over community started in 1994 and 95. All those groups, they have contributed to the economy by staying in the community, by eating out. We eat out a lot, you know that. We fill up all the parking stalls. So these people are doing all the right things. They've given you an economic base, and they're hoping that you would respect those 5 communities within less than a mile that are experiencing this traffic, and leave it as a park and consider it to be a dry park. We understand all those things. Thank you.
Thank you.
How do you feel about the name Heaven's Gate?
Yes. I think you and I should be brainstorming, and we'll present it to them, because people, when I tell people there's this great walking trail, and I said, and please forgive me, but it's called Hellhole. Why did they call it that? I said, maybe they could have called it Orin. They could have, yeah, they could call it Orrin Hatch Hole. I don't know. You know what I mean? He needs a monument, but you know, either way, it'd be nice to look at something different. And you do have a real strong community of 55 and over, and you've done a great job in developing that community. So keep it there. Thank you.
Giving us all your time. In defense to the Bernadette Sievertson, I live in Ridgepoint for 9 years. I experienced a near accident 3 years ago with a police officer. He was flying out of Coral Canyon, and I came to my stop. I have a very large car, came to a stop, looked both ways several times. That's my neighborhood. I know exactly how to watch it. We've had a death in our community because of that Coral Canyon curve. And as I made my right turn, there was no one there at 10:30 at night. There was 2 cars that left and went to Coral Canyon. So I approached, looked left to Coral Canyon, which is what you have to do. And as I took my right turn to my 2 left turns to get into my development at Ridgepoint, my final turn, I had looked over. This far from my car was a black police car. And I'm going, where did you come from? So I pulled into my development and stopped. And he got out. He didn't have a badge on him. I think he was embarrassed. He was driving without his lights, looking for drugs or something. And I was not the druggie. I mean, I was not the little old lady. I am the little old lady from Pasadena. And so, I mean, we were both shocked. And he was probably shocked that he had to pull over and meet up with me. I said, what happened? Well, what happened? And he goes, and I said, I want to, and he asked for my license and all that kind of stuff. And he said, I'm very sorry. I'm glad no one was hurt. And I said, I'm very glad I didn't hurt you and you didn't hurt me. But this is why we need, I mean, my first year moving in there, I had guests at my home and I was taking them out to the airport, and there was an accident, a flight to life to Vegas. You know, it was like, wow. And it was someone that was, you know, late 60s with her grandson. And so just, you know, people aren't going to hear about that. That police officer is never going to tell that story. I have told it over and over again. Everybody I know knows that story of why did that black police car show up this far from me and where did he come from? And I told him, I says, I don't know where you came from. I said, I live here. I know this path. And I'm very cautious because of the drivers. So I just wanted to share that with you folks. And just to think about putting your 2 cents in for a light there. Because if there was a light, guess what? He would have had to stop.
Correct.
And I mean, anyway, that's my story. And I'm sticking to it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
No
We're glad
suggestion.
you're here to tell that story.
Yeah.
Thank heavens.
No suggestion for the naming of the.
Oh, I think that's great. Wasn't it your suggestion?
It's getting better. Gate would be spelled G-A-I-T.
G-A-I-T. Okay. Anyway, but you know, we'll help you.
There you go.
Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Lawrence Eldridge. We used to live in the villas at Sienna Hills, which we were glad that you guys rejected nightly rentals, even though people kept doing it, and we'd have to call the compliance officer, and we'd have people jumping off the roof into the pool at 2 a.m. and beer cans and trailers. We moved out of that messy neighborhood to get away from that high density. And I think that a dry park or pavilion or place to people to have picnics, it would go really great there. I think if you zone it for an apartment building, that it'll be messy and it will decrease the value of our homes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. My name is Lori Lyle and I live in Ridge Point. And not to belabor this whole traffic thing, but if you put a light, I'm understanding you would put one at Washington Parkway and Telegraph. Is that correct?
It's on our plan to go there.
Okay, that will really not help us at all because we have to either take a left to get onto Telegraph or a right. And really what will happen is the cars that are lined up there and stopped will just be in our way. So it won't, like if you've ever tried to get out of the Albertsons, you know how the Albertsons on Telegraph gets backed up at Green Springs from the light at Green Springs? That could be our situation right there. So thinking that I know a light's probably eventually going to go there.
I'm pretty certain at some point.
Yeah, but I think that's another reason though why not to increase the traffic there, because we're already going to have a hard time pulling out onto Telegraph, if that makes sense. Either way, because if we're so close to Washington Parkway that it's conceivable that cars will be stopped and backed up into blocking our street. So we'll have to wait for some good Samaritan to say, oh, okay, I'm stopped at this light, but this person's trying to get out, so I'll give them room. So I just want to kind of reiterate that a light is not.
There's also a light planned at 1100, right? The light at 1100 would give you breaks in traffic that would allow you to get through.
I just wanted to say that traffic light at Telegraph in Washington, it's not necessarily going to be like, oh, this is just wonderful for us.
No, it's not a be all end all, but in time, if there were two lights, you will get breaks in traffic to be able to get through.
Did you have a question?
No, just that there probably likely aren't enough homes in your area to merit another traffic light.
I don't think, we're not going to get one, I'm sure. But I just wanted to make it very clear that just because there is going to be a light in the neighborhood at some point, that's not necessarily going to help us. That's all. Thank you.
That's clear. Thanks.
Hello, my name's Brandy Perry and I own Vacation Resort Solutions. We've been managing homes at the Casitas at Sienna Hills and also Coral Ridge for years. Not all of them are vacation rentals. We also do long-term rentals in there as well. And then there's permanent residents that live there too. So all of those homes in there are not designated it's just an overlay where they have that ability to do it if they want, but not all of the owners do. I manage about 30 in the Casitas and about 35 in Coral Ridge. And we do pay the transient tax every quarter, which I believe 1% goes to the city of Washington. No? Okay.
Not on the
Washington County at this point.
Yeah, but the city, because I know St. George gets their portion, and so you guys should be getting a little bit of that.
It's on the agenda.
Good. Okay. We pride ourselves as a company in most of our homes that we manage are in the city of Washington. And the reason for that is the gateway to the parks and Kolob and Sand Hollow and the things to do. I'm so excited about what's going to be happening on Grapevine That development is going to be incredible. And yes, the guests will use it. They will contribute. They will love it. They will use the parks. They'll use the commercial properties. It would be definitely a great perk for them. We've had, since 2015, we've managed in the Casitas, the very first home there. We have had great success there. We haven't had trouble with people. As a company, we do make sure that the guests that come in understand what the rules are, the house rules. So that's something we definitely pride ourselves to take care of, so that everybody understands what those rules are, because we respect people that live here in this community, and we don't want it to be a problem. We don't want to be have it be a nuisance for them. But I do believe that tourism we're in our infancy with vacation rentals. It is not going away. We're getting more and more tourism coming here, and that's going to increase every single year. And we provide jobs for people. These guests that come in are enjoying the restaurants, that they're bringing so much to our beautiful community. So I am definitely for it. So I just kind of wanted to introduce myself and just let you know that what we do here in Washington.
Can you provide us, maybe not right now, but with statistics in an overlay zone with short-term rental? How many of those are long-term rentals? How many of those are owner-occupied? Can you give us some statistics in the areas that you're responsible for?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I appreciate getting that.
No, that's Red Sands. We're in St. George, right behind the police station. And then, but we're on site every day. I mean, we have our office staff that works in the office, but I'm out there every day. So it's just something we want to make sure. The other thing I wanted to point out is the homes, the owners that I manage for, we have almost 100 homes. These owners use these homes. So during the times they're not here, we're able to rent these homes out for them.
Well, and we recognize that during certain parts of the year, probably no one wants a home in St. George. But if we had some statistics as what the real impact is, even if it's just for the ones that you manage, that might be useful to us.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to do that. The other thing I wanted to mention is these homes are very well maintained. I've managed homes in Coral Ridge for almost 10 years, and they look brand new. So that's one thing with vacation rentals, is they have to be 5-star. So they have to be maintained very well. Whereas long-term rentals, sometimes they're not maintained as well. So there's a big difference.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd be happy to. Okay, thank you.
Pull this way down. When a couple of years back,
If you would give your name,
my
please.
name's Michelle Peterson. Sorry, I live in Coral Canyon on the ridge. And a few years back, I was telling a neighbor, my son was standing there, telling him about a run we went on, and I said, we started in Hellhole and we ended up coming out the damn road. And my son went, Mom. So I
It's
was like,
spirit therapy for the local religion. It's all good.
I'm here to talk to you about the overnight overlays. I feel like we have some insight to it. We own a business called Micah's Pools, and we are residents of Washington, but you know, we do work all over the area. So we have been doing a lot of work, or not lately, but before. Santa Clara has gone into this. They have a giant neighborhood of them. And so we were hired to do some stuff out there. And I want you to realize this is coming from, we have a business and we could possibly, you know, get some economic boon from this. But the thing is we live here and we've experienced the reality of them. And I've actually spent the last couple of years feeling sorry for the residents of Santa Clara that have ended up with these. In the neighborhoods that we have been in, I have not seen one permanent resident. They are all out of town people. And in our dealings with them, a lot of them come from California and they love our cheap real estate. They come here, they buy it. And in having to go in there and deal, we know when the owners are there and they're not there very much. It's a business. And I have watched Santa Clara, and I felt like it has sucked. They just come in and they suck the life out of it. They take over our roads, and just the traffic, the noise, I feel like they instantly, I won't be able to go to church anymore. They're going to take over our chapel. They're going to, they're chomping at the bit to come do these, because I think we've wisely not allowed them in. And so as soon as we let them in, they'll be here. And I feel like it caters to the few, which are the developers, at the expense of the many residents. And even being up on the ridge, I feel like it's going to affect us, because I've seen the way it has affected all the surrounding area and the traffic and it's made me sad. So.
Thank you for that. Anyone else that would like to come forward? If not, go ahead.
I'm Jim Raines, the evil developer.
You sound a lot better this time. I hope your trip to Louisiana has fared better in the past few weeks.
Represent Brennan Holdings. We have the development lease on areas 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 in Sienna Hills. So as you can see, most of everything left in Sienna Hills is our projects to develop. We developed the Casitas. We developed Arroyo in 4B, 4C. 5 will be more of Arroyo type lots. 6 is a mirror image of the Casitas in Area 3. Area 7 is single family detached lots, and Area 8 is another townhome project. First, let me say, I think the lady that gives statistics was very well-meaning, but she did misstate some things. There isn't the number of nightly rentals that she stated. There's only about 124 in Casitas that are nightly rentals. Only 24 are not. There's 144 total. So there's only 60 units in Ladera, and there's 384 planned units in 6, 7, and 8. But with that said, is that a lot of units? Yes. Let's talk a little bit about nightly rentals. The reason we're asking for nightly rentals is because there's a big demand for nightly rentals. And nightly rentals is a term like saying houses. It covers a broad spectrum of different type of products and different type of projects. Nightly rentals is not just a phenomenon to Washington County, Utah. It's a phenomenon throughout the country. Nightly rentals are popping up all over the place. They're very popular. The way people vacation, the way people travel, how they like to stay is changing. People like to rent a home rather than rent a hotel room. How long that'll last, I don't know. I don't have the insight to that. But I think we're just in the infancy of that beginning. There is a huge demand, and they're going to come, and there are going to be nightly rentals. They can either be in well-planned, thought-out communities in areas next to commercial with access to freeways, access to get to the parks and things for people coming to regulate, or you can spread them, I think Drew's term, willy-nilly throughout the city in various residential areas is probably not a good idea. So when you say nightly rentals, there are a lot of problems with nightly rentals. You can go online and find volume after volume after volume in nightly rentals. One of the ladies came up and talked about the Santa Clara project. President's Day weekend, because I was curious how our Casitas project compared to the Santa Clara one, I spent a lot of time going back and forth to those two projects, night and day. We, a third, I don't know the statistics, and half the statistics are made up on the things, so I'm not going to quote numbers, but we do not allow institutional buyers. No one can buy more than 2 units in any of our projects. So people aren't coming in and buying units as a commercial entity. Real owners are buying these units. We have a lot of permanent residents in Casitas, and if you went through Casitas on President's Day weekend versus Santa Clara, you would not know the Casitas was nightly rentals. It had a much different feel. Parking was adequate. It was full. There were a lot of people there. The pool was adequate. Things weren't overloaded. So when you say nightly rentals, please understand there's a huge difference in what nightly rentals can be. They need to be well planned. They need to be tailored towards owners, not institutional buyers. And they need to be planned for eventual homeowners. And that's what we've done, and that's what we've done in Casitas, and that's what we're proposing in 6, 7, and 8. Ivory Homes did Casitas. They're under contract to do 6 and 8, probably 7 too. It will be well managed. It will be principally marketed to people from off the Wasatch Front, northern, the cold climates, that want to eventually come and live in St. George, but aren't quite ready to move here and want to be able to get a unit and come and enjoy it when they enjoy it. But when they're not able to come, get some revenue to help offset their second home. So that's the market that we're going after. That's the market we have experienced in Area 3 and in our Ladera project. And so we're trying to meet a demand. We're trying to meet a demand in a well-controlled, a well-planned area that if you're going to do nightly rentals anywhere, why not buy your biggest planned commercial area? Why not buy an area that has direct access to I-15 without going to a bunch of residential neighborhoods? Why not have an area that is close to get to the parks and to get to the recreational areas like Sand Hollow and the other areas that people come? Tourism has always been a huge part of our economy. It continues to be a huge part of our economy. If you took growth and development away, it would be our economy. Right now, growth and development is a large part of our economy. But if that died, the main industry we have here is tourism. You know, you say we don't pay room tax. Yes, they pay room tax. These nightly rentals. No, but the comment was that nightly rentals don't pay that tax. They do, because it's professionally managed by people like her and her company. We don't allow. I can go on today and rent my house. There's a house in my neighborhood. Nightly rentals aren't allowed. I can go on VRBO or HomeAway or multitude of other ways you want to do. I can put an ad there and I can rent my house nightly rentals. And I could probably, it's a 3,000 square foot house. I could rent it to 4 or 5 soccer teams at a time, because that's what they do. And come in and do it and have 30 kids come and probably rent it every spring and fall weekend of the year and be quite a financial boom for me. But no, I'm not going to do that. It's not managed.
So, but what guarantees do the city have that this property doesn't flip to somebody else who cares less about it and just doesn't want to manage as well? I agree with your point that the key to a successful nightly rental in a neighborhood is the management, the levels and the amounts. I'm not settled on yet, but what the city really can't have any guarantees that that's not going to happen, that it won't flip to somebody else who will care less.
Our situation is we don't own the land. State institutional trust land owns it, which is probably one of the best land developers I've ever worked with. Very land conscious. You can see the amount of open space that's left in this project. If you drive through our projects, almost every lot in our Arroyo doesn't have anyone in their backyard. Been very popular, and we can go in there and do less expensive homes, but still have a nice fill and a nice thing because nobody's in your backyard. And it's because Sitla's willing to plan and do. Under our development lease, we can't flip it.
And I get that, and then it'll be.
Let me answer your question. Is what assures you we can't flip it? Our development lease, we can't do that by law, by our agreement with Sitla under our contract. We have to develop it. We have to put all the infrastructure in, and we have to sell it to the end user. In this case, is a builder, would be Ivory Homes. Now, Ivory Homes is the largest builder in the state of Utah. They are here long-term. They're not going to do something that hurts their project. They're going to do something that builds continued.
Oh, but Ivory Homes, if you have agreements with Ivory Homes, that they have to manage it. Certainly.
They have to manage it. They can't sell the institutional builders. They can't sell more than 2 units to one entity.
Parcel 3 didn't have the requirement for singular HOA, but we've added that in other areas.
We did, but in our agreement, Ivory Homes, we put those requirements in. Okay. So we put restrictions over and above even what Sienna Hills HOA or what the city would require. We're in this long term. We've got 384 units at 6, 7, and 8. We don't want it to, and they're going to buy it in phases. They're going to build 50 units, and then they'll build another 50 units, and just like we did in Casitas. We're building phase 4. In about 2.5 years, we sold 144 units. Ladera sold. Most of the Coral Ridge townhomes are sold. Why have more nightly rentals? Well, because there's a huge demand for them. And why put it here is because it's close to commercial. It doesn't have to access through existing residential neighborhoods. It has freeway access, and it's in most cases over a half mile from any existing home. The 500-foot limit, there's nothing within 500 feet. 5 will be our only area that has any proximity to nightly rentals, but it's our project. And so we'll manage that, and we'll manage the expectations of the people buying 5 to understand that 6, 7, and 8, if approved, will have nightly rentals. It's also another constraint in Sienna Hills. You'll remember our landslide that took out Telegraph Road. That whole hillside in the brown you've seen running up here. This is the same landslide. The landslide occurred right here. That's the same hillside. And Sitla has Area 6 right here with a bunch of homes. If you remember, 6 months ago or something like that, they came in at our urging, by the way, and eliminated Area 6 and moved the densities into 6, 7, and 8. And 6 is a beautiful little canyon. It's one of my favorite spots in all of Sienna Hills. But the problem with the slide, by the time we narrowed it down outside of the landslide, so we weren't touching any of the historic landslide out there, it became very narrow. It didn't work for residential homes. And as you get into 7 and 8, they both sit up high and have significant freeway noise. That's coming down that hill. There's a lot of braking, and it's a noisy section of road. So we looked real hard at, well, what will work with the constraints of the land, with the clay, with the landslide, what will work with the noise, and what is compatible with all that, given the fact that 10A, B, and C, E, and F are all going to be commercial. And with the demand for nightly rental, we thought, well, we're well managed, or well planned to meet a need. This is a good place to do it. Bring competent builders in, large enough that can control it, have it managed, and I think it'll be an asset to the community. And these are owners. These are owners buying these units. If you go into casitas, there's probably, I'm guessing, a third or more of the owners are full-time residents in there. And almost all the nightly rentals are used as much by the owner as they are rented. It's not a commercial endeavor. It's just meeting a current demand. I don't know what's fueling that, or I don't know the science behind but I know I use nightly rentals when I don't. And you say we're hurting the hotel industry. How many hotel rooms are going up in our area right now? We're doing well over 1,000 are under construction now. Well over 1,000. Tourism is huge here. The demand is here. Softball tournaments, baseball tournaments, all those things are we're promoting and trying to bring people over to our community and trying to get people to shop and spend money here and utilize our commercial things. This helps meet that demand. And we think it's an appropriate area. We're not impacting existing residents, and we'll plan it, manage it, and control it in such a way that it won't be a problem to your city. It'll be an asset to your city.
Jim, one question, just on the Grapevine Crossing roadway. I'm assuming that's going to be a minor arterial road going through there, so no addressing predominantly off of that?
There is no house running on Grapevine Crossing anywhere. Yeah.
That was a concern, because I know we've had some other areas in the city where we've had those types of roads loop.
Yeah.
And we went through some readdressing issues. That was a very painful endeavor a few years ago.
This is just a copy of our master plan. Some of you, I think, have it already, but if others would like to see. When Sitla redid 5, 6, 7, and 8 and moves Area 6 off the hill, it was kind of based on this plan. So that will be coming in with our preliminary plats and other things to show this plan. It gives you an idea. When we're quoting how many units, it's based on that plan. But that bubble plan and the densities that were approved in the PCD match that. In fact, we're less than what was actually approved.
Okay, thank you.
So we're really not trying to add more density. The density is already there. We're just saying, let us meet a demand for the nightly rentals in a controlled, managed area.
The loss of parcel 6 lost density.
Lost density.
As I recall.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then even our plan here doesn't have quite as much density as the PCD has. So there's even a drop there. It's real
And you
close.
feel confident that the way that it's structured, that the rules and governance of these properties cannot change over time as ownership changes?
No, the HOAs, the CCNRs, and those things prohibit that.
The state,
Yeah.
the state trust has representatives in the HOA that makes the determination of who gets hired, and they keep pretty tight control of what's going on. And they have over at Coral Canyon for years, so.
This may be a little bit off topic, but one thing I was looking at this plan is one thing that's been championed that the local residents love are the trail systems. Are these trail systems proposed to go underneath roads or to cross over roads on the surface?
Most of them run into open space areas. It's a different trail system than you have up there.
Yeah, just a quick observation and question.
Can't think of anywhere we go under the roads. Almost
Because
all of them.
I see them ending at the roads. Obviously, for the bigger design is the road, but I was just curious. It appeared that it may do one or the other.
And we can look at that. We're not really at that level of detail. There may be a place that it would make sense to do an underpass. That Grapevine Crossing is going to have some traffic on it, so it may be safer to go under. But honestly, we haven't looked at that yet.
Okay, thank you.
It's a good comment. It's good thought. Yeah. We do have a lot of trails in there. The dinosaur tracks are not the greatest dinosaur tracks, but I enjoy them. My kids and grandkids enjoy them. I think they're great. But I think outdoor recreation is hugely important to both the residents and the visitors to the area, and we want to provide that. You see, we've got several pools in there. We've got a lot of parking. We'll plan it well and design it well and manage it well.
So just for your reference, the trails that are going through here also tie into the trails that go underneath I-15 and up into the HCP.
Right.
So-
So I'm a huge fan of the continuity and the safety of those trails. I think they're great. I know what they're tying into. Just the concern as well as we're doing this, if there are any things that afford us the
Anthony,
ability.
you might want to speak in your mic. You're not being picked up.
I apologize. I know it's one of those things we champion, and that's one of the things I've noticed in the developments that you've done so far is to make sure that those things are put in place. Just any way we can get people off of roads if we're going forward is just one of those things that I would just like to offer to see if it is possible within areas to do that.
I think it's a great suggestion, and because of the topography out there, it probably lends itself to some undercrossings.
There may
that
be
make sense.
some.
Yeah, I think it's a great suggestion. Yeah,
Okay.
we're personally trails we believe is the #1 amenity. I went to the National Home Builders thing 2 years ago, and a group in Phoenix they were looking at retirement communities, the Del Webb type communities. And they did a huge study, and they wanted to see how important golf courses were to that, because that was kind of the focus of Del Webb for years. And they did a huge study and spent just close to 7 figures, just under $1 million on the study. And by far, the #1 amenity that's wanted is trails. Golf courses were like 5 or 6, but trails were by a huge margin.
We're glad you
#1
take that
amenity
advice.
people wanted.
That's really nice to have in our community.
And so we really focus on trails. In fact, our next project coming to you will be the trails at Long Valley, which has over 7.5 miles of paved trails plus nature trails in it. So we like trails. Yeah, we're a big fan of trails. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Hi, my name's Alan Cardall. I live in Ridge Point. And it would just be nice, not only for the residents of Ridge Point, but also for the city of Washington, if you took those 4 acres and slightly developed that trailhead and kind of made that into a nature park trail instead of more high density housing. That's my point of view. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
My name is Richard Nims. I live in Ridge Point number 45. I'm opposed to any development adjacent to 17B. Two of my concerns are the traffic light, which is a potential accident waiting to happen. People racing down at 45, 50 miles an hour, and the light turns yellow, people slam on their brakes. A lot of people following too close at the speed. They don't leave enough distance. I've been rear-ended twice in my vehicle. And the other thing is that any potential development, no matter what it is, it's going to demand water. And this is a desert. And I think that's added to a potential problem in the community for a demand on water that we don't really need. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron, it looks like we're looking to you.
All right. Aaron Langston, I'm the applicant. I don't know that I'm going to be able to address all of the concerns. I'll try to hit some of the bigger ones. I believe the council had a question on the wall height thing. I'd just like to briefly address that. We did a Sienna Hills amendment a couple of years ago that obligated by city ordinance every person who was building a wall in Sienna Hills to go to the city and get a building permit for the wall. We haven't undone that. So what we're trying to give a little bit of history of what's going on, I'm going to go back to Coral Canyon. Back in the days of Coral Canyon, you had a 6-foot wall requirement. Suncor, who was managing that back in the day, just kind of authorized people to go less or more. I mean, it still went through the city, but people would come in and say, we don't like 6 feet. You know, we want it 2 foot in the back and then put a view fence above it so we can see the open space behind it. Or I don't like my neighbor, I want to do a bigger wall so that I can't see them. And under those scenarios, Suncor would just grant it.
Can you lean in maybe?
Yes, is this a little bit better?
There's just some people wanting to hear you better. I struggle sometimes with the mic too.
Thank you. So is that better? Can you hear me a little better? Okay. What happens is over time, then you get that person who wanted that specific wall, he or she moves, a new person comes in and they start doing their homework and they look through the PCD and they say, hey, we see that we're supposed to have a 6-foot wall. We don't. And they come to us as the developer and they say, guess what? You owe us a 6-foot wall. So this is what we're trying to avoid. Here in Sienna Hills now, with our new developments, we've had a number of the builders come in and say, we would like permission to do view fences behind us. And I'll ask them, how tall is your view fence? Well, we want to do a 2-foot pony wall and then maybe a 2-foot iron view fence on top of that. And so what we have told them is we're happy to grant a variance where basically you sign on the dotted line that says this owner knows that he's waiving his rights from the PCD's 6-foot requirement. So that's all we're trying to do is give us that authority to say, yes, we'll allow people to do more or less depending on what they want if we determine it's not going to adversely affect the neighbors. But any wall that's over 6 foot still has to come to you through regular code. But technically any wall that requires a foundation, according to the Sienna Hills PCD, they have to come through planning and zoning anyway and go through the building permit
The
process.
smaller walls I have no problem with. It's and up to 6 foot, because obviously that's our ordinance. When all of a sudden you have the ability to supersede our ordinance, I have a hard time with that.
Yeah, it would still have to go through you.
But there again, it comes back through us. But what if we say, okay, you can't have it? Well, our homeowners association said we can, and it turns into a war that doesn't need to happen. If we today say, you know what, we can grant variances from 6 foot down, it meets our ordinance, then we do away with the war that happens down the road, which makes us all happy.
We're good with that. Okay. We're absolutely good with that.
Okay.
Most, in fact, to my knowledge, I haven't had anybody in Sienna Hills request a wall taller than 6 feet. We know what's coming because it happens in Coral Canyon. But if that's what the city council wants,
That's
we
my
have no problem.
opinion. I'm not the council, I'm one. But that's my opinion that says our ordinance says 6 foot. So why do we allow somebody else to supersede our ordinance, even though you say, well, they have to come back for our approval? It just turns into a war that really doesn't need to happen at this point.
Okay. Yeah, well said. The next point that I wrote down, and this is to address some of the issues that the folks in the Ridge Point subdivision brought up regarding traffic. I don't pretend to be a traffic expert by any stretch. What I would remind people is our original plan that was first done in 2004 showed parcel 18 and parcel 19. Parcel 19 was on the extreme southern end. That was where we were going to put a multi-housing project on the hill. You will notice that is no longer there. So the densities were previously approved. We just took it off. After the original plan came in, the city came in with, a different hillside ordinance that affected that. We just thought it's not worth it. We're going to take it off. So we're really not adding any more traffic than what was originally anticipated. That brings me to the landfill. I just want to kind of briefly touch on a couple of things. There were a few dates thrown out there. Just for clarity, the city picked up that land from the BLM in 1956. So that was all city owned. The city operated the landfill there from 1956 to 1980. And that's when it formally closed landfill. Sitla acquired that property from the city in 1988. It had about a 8-year window with next to no activity on that parcel. So there was one gentleman who came up and he mentioned a lot of facts about decomposition. I'm not here to argue those facts. I'm here to state that is probably accurate. I'm going to assume that's accurate for landfills that are decomposing. This landfill is not. So we have potholed this.
What about his dogs?
Yeah, they may be.
But actually, most of those, about every night they lit it on fire. So most of those were burned.
Which is actually, yes, we've potholed this many times to figure out the vertical and horizontal boundary of the landfill. So as we've done this, we've discovered that there are places where everything's been completely burned. And we've discovered there are places where when they would drill in with their auger bit, they're pulling up trash bags full of trash. They haven't even started the decomposition process. It's just as if it were buried there a week ago. So that's what you have in the landfill. It is a mix.
Why did you acquire the park area? Why did Sitla buy that area?
Technically, we didn't buy it. This was a trade. Washington City came to Sitla and said, guess what? We would like to build a golf course. It's now known as the Green Springs Golf Course. We own that property. So we had some exchanges that took place, and part of that exchange was we picked this up. But we understood there's a landfill, and so the city was gracious enough to say, but we'll indemnify you if there are any health risks that come of this. We're the bad guy. So that was the deal. Now, to that end, as we look at it, we have parcel 18 that's already zoned. It's ready to go. We're under contract with the buyer. So we are going to be putting a housing project there. Now, as we do that, we start working with DEQ to say, what do we need to be aware of? And DEQ came out on site. We had 2 individuals from their office. They came down, they looked at it with us, and they said, yes, you can put a park on this as you've expressed, but here's the deal. And they start outlining some of the things that you have to do. You're going to have to make sure you have an engineered cap, because if you have any percolation that goes through there, then it starts the decomposition process. So that was one major concern they had. So keep in mind, the original plan showed a park here, which would be a 4-acre grass park that you are watering all the time. So that is a concern. Secondarily, you have moving groundwater in here. Look at the landslide. We know there's groundwater in there. We know there are springs in there, and we know they relocate. So
They already relocated from the slide too.
Yes, they have. The springs in the Green Spring area that come all the way down through Sienna Hills, they relocate all the time. So one of the major concerns DEQ had was what happens if you get groundwater in there from the bottom that starts decomposing the trash. So he says you have to monitor it until we can ascertain that everything is safe. So if we build the park, that's the deal. You have to simply monitor it for who knows how long, because you can have underground fires, you can have all kinds of different issues that take place with a bunch of unknowns. So what we are simply doing is saying, hey, there is another solution. The solution is we'll pick it up, we'll haul it away, but as you know, the expense for that is great, to which the trade-off for that is we have to sell it as high-density multifamily.
What about the suggestions for a dry park?
If it's a dry park, then it just remains as is.
But did DEQ have concerns? I mean, because they were talking about underwater groundwater. Did they have concerns with requiring you guys to do monitoring now?
Absolutely. Well, for right now, you're saying with us doing nothing.
With us doing nothing, I mean, if we leave it the park zone, do you still have to go in and mitigate it?
My point is to that, we probably will. And what I mean by that is currently we've done nothing. I don't have a trailhead. I don't have a bathroom. I don't have units on parcel 18. I've got nothing. I don't know the answer to that specifically. I did not ask that directly. My assumption based on our conversations with him is as soon as we get parcel 18 in, we will have to do that. That's a good question. I can find that out and send everybody an email, a follow-up email.
We indemnify.
Yes.
Okay.
Are we seeing any gases emitted? Do you know? I'm assuming that with their.
When DEQ was there, they had no, I mean, they're looking around saying this kind of looks like a slam dunk. I don't see any evidence of gases at this point.
Being emitted at
Yeah.
this point.
And they should
So
know.
it'd be more the water entering it. That would
Their
then trigger
big concern was underground water
underground
because
water,
of the
or water
movement.
coming from the top
Yes.
percolating.
Well, yeah, if we put a park on it and water
Correct.
it, yes. Yeah. So these are all issues that we took to the SITLA board in Salt Lake, and we explained the exact same scenario with them and just said, board, what do you suggest? So their unanimous support was for us to move the landfill. In fact, that's what they instructed us to do, just relocate it. So that is what we are now asking city council to do. Allow us to relocate it. It takes away all of the unknowns. It takes away the fear factor. It's just gone. It does come at a little bit of a cost, but I think the way that we could look at a little bit of a cost, which is housing, I know also that the city needs affordable housing. This is a great project. This is something that we could do here. It meets the city's need for where do we find land where we can do affordable housing, and with that density, we can achieve that here.
How many doors were in parcel 19?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. I only brought a recent map. Parcel 19? It's multifamily.
18 and 19 were multifamily.
It's a PCD zoning, so it's different than that. We have densities, and I don't have my map with me, but if you pull to the right of that map, it'll show the density on 18.
Aaron, what is your thought density of your 17?
What we would propose on 17 is just to match the density on 18. That's really the only way that the sales price for 18 would essentially get us out of our recovery costs on 17.
So you'd match that same density?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you recall the 2004 when this originally was done, the total allowable density of the project?
Not off the top of my head. I've got all those numbers. I've got the 2004 maps. In fact, they're on our website.
I'm curious what was originally approved and where you're at now after going through the development.
And to your point, I mean, densities, these are the maximum densities you can achieve.
Correct.
And as our development partners, Jim Raines can attest in there, you never achieve those. You go in and, oh, there's clay issues. No, we have this issue and we have that issue. So the maximum that was allowed, we're not even
close to
that.
Correct.
So we've tried to adjust for that over the years by rezoning things, but we're still under.
I heard several times the mentioning of it 3 stories. And I suspect the homes on the other side are 1 story in Ridgecrest.
In Ridge Point?
Ridge Point,
Yeah.
sorry.
there's,
So is it your intent to put 3 stories in if this is approved?
we did the PCD amendment a while ago that addressed the height restriction on that. If I remember correctly, it
For
was
18 or for
50
17B?
for multifamily of that density.
For 18.
So it'd be 18, and if 17B were to be approved of that, it would be the same. I don't remember if I think it was 50 foot, but that was in one of the last
No,
amendments
it's
that we did.
commercial and
It was commercial and
It's involved.
multifamily of 22 dwellings per acre.
So it would be 50 foot?
Yes.
That's what they could build up to. Yep.
So 22 per acre, just for people, I don't know if people have been through Mesa Falls over on Mall Drive. Mesa Falls is 22 units per acre, exactly. So you can drive into that project, drive through it and see what that density is.
This, and just so that the council understands on parcel 18, and I know we're not here to talk about parcel 18, it's not on the discussion tonight, but the buyer for 14A and 18 are the same. And what they're planning to do in 14A is what we call a market rate product, which will be a multifamily product that will basically just be what you would do on the normal market. It would essentially mimic what Ivory Homes has in parcel 3, only it doesn't have the nightly rental overlay. Now on the south side of the road, they would have the same management company. They would have the same look. It would be the exact same building. Everything about it would be identical, except it would be what we call a LIHTC product, which is a low-income housing. It goes through all the government assistance and everything. And so it directly caters to those folks who wouldn't otherwise be able to get into anything. So this is a direct outreach to the affordable housing component that we have here. Now, I know that that's going to raise the dander of a lot of people because they're going to think automatically, oh, that's going to be a really badly managed product. If you go through Ivory Homes, you're going to see, and I encourage you, I invite you to drive through Ivory Homes, drive through parcel 3 and look at what they've done. Now the builders are different. I don't want to confuse that, but we are holding them to the same standards. So what you see in Ivory Homes' product is what we are demanding in both parcel 14A and 18. So that's how we're doing it.
So I appreciate that, yeah.
I'm sorry?
3? Did you say 3 is the one that?
The design standards will be equivalent to that. In other words, as you drive through, you know, parcel 3 is kind of our showcase for what a good housing, a multifamily housing project should be. And that's because you have proper management in there. That is what we are requiring in both 14A and 18.
But the densities are different, right?
Yeah, densities will be a little different. Yes. Yep.
So Council Starkey, if back to the landfill, what liabilities does the city have if they get in there starting to remove that, and we have this indemnified landfill? If they end up finding things in there that we don't want to find, what liabilities does the city still cover once they start removing trash?
Well, as old as I probably look, I was actually not here when the indemnity. So
No.
I haven't seen it. Don't necessarily.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And I go back to right after that golf course was built, about almost 30 years ago, and so I didn't see indemnity.
I can forward it to you.
Yeah, but I mean, I can't answer the question now because of it. I mean, based on that, but I can promise you already. I was already in my mind of them. Yeah, that's something I'm gonna have to look at since it's been mentioned 14 times tonight.
So Aaron, is it Sitla's intention to lean on that indemnity, or is it Sitla's intention to take responsibility of it once they start removing it?
Just maybe, I don't know if I'm understanding correctly, but guide me if I'm not. But what I'm understanding is, I'm going to paint 2 scenarios. Scenario number 1, you choose to have us leave the landfill. Okay, then we put in our homes on parcel 18, and all of a sudden, a year down the road, we start getting people with toxicity or other health-related issues that they can directly tie to some kind of seepage that's taken place in the landfill. So they start making claims and they come to us as a developer to say, there's a landfill here, we have health issues and we can demonstrate it, we're gonna sue you. We pull out our get out of jail free card and say, talk to the city.
Right.
That's how that works.
Even if it works, just let me, so my experience, at least with the EPA, with other big landowners, where especially when it comes to things like when we used to have the issues with underground storage tanks, issues, you can have all of the indemnities. Let's say we have an indemnity for us. You can have all the indemnities you want in the world. I can tell you with EPA type of issues, clean water, toxic, storage tanks that got left behind. Folks that come in and make claims, even with that one, you start hitting everybody up the line anyway. So, I'd rather be involved with
I just
SITLA.
forwarded it to you, but let me read what it says. City.
That doesn't change anything I said here, though, with or without it. I think it's always an issue.
The city undertakes to indemnify state from any and all liability, loss, or damage that may result from any claims, demands, costs, or judgments, including liability for hazardous waste, if any, deposited on the property against it arising from the city's prior operation from the solid waste landfill. So,
Yeah, but I don't know. We don't have a video that's attached to that with Calvin Rampton going wink, wink, nudge, nudge. What I'm saying is, I would be concerned anyway on the land that we're involved in some aspect. When you start dealing with EPA and clean, that's something we'll for sure have to look at.
Sure.
Irrespective,
Right.
I think
Aaron,
we'd be careful about it.
Will you go on to scenario number 2?
Yeah, you bet. So scenario number 2 is we decide, let's remove the liability. Let's just get rid of it. We recognize we're going to have to put more homes on there, but we also recognize we had that originally planned anyway with parcel 19. So we're just going back to what was originally planned in terms of density, but let's remove it. Let's haul that up the road. Let's take it to the county landfill and let's dispose of it properly. Under that scenario, it's gone. Our engineer right now is finalizing plans and they are working with DEQ to come up with plans that say, how do we know for sure it's all removed? And DEQ will be on site to inspect and to determine, okay, we're now good. So there's a whole level of tests that we will do once we dig down to the depths and get it all out.
So in that, I guess you get in there and they find out, somebody says, oh, whoops, we did all this testing, but it's not what we thought. It's worse than what we thought. Remove it. And there's problems.
We keep digging. We remove the problem. That's what we're proposing to do.
What's the density on section 6 currently?
On 6? If you slide it to the right, we'll see the table.
I'm 7, I think.
6, I think I have here.
Yeah.
Complex, 8.
6 is, parcel 6 is 20 acres. It's 7 dwellings per acre, which would hold a maximum of 144 units.
Okay, I don't even want an answer right now, but I'm just wondering if we traded some of that higher density into parcel 6 or 7 to keep it lower here and still have you get enough funds to take out that landfill. I'm just wondering if there isn't some balance we can create here. We don't put all that density on that parcel, but we allow some
Increased density somewhere else.
Additional density somewhere else, and we still get that.
It's a
landfill
great
out of it.
suggestion. And just so you know the mechanics of that, as Jim Raines was up here stating, we already have agreements in place with him. So really, we would need to go back to him to see, can we adjust those, so that you're getting more money, we're getting more money to, account for what we would do on 18.
Exactly, but not
I'm open to that.
necessarily here.
So I have a
It's a
question.
discussion. It's
Sure.
a discussion because
Absolutely.
I think, having a 3-story next to the homes, I kind of get that that's disturbing.
Well, especially
And I
where-
get that you need some reimbursement
Mhm.
because you're about to incur a lot of costs. I get all that. Is there another way?
So
especially where it was a park. They had in mind that it was going to be a
Was
park.
in reality
Well-
park. Now it may not be a park. It may be some.
And I've got
some
thoughts on a
smaller
park
homes,
that I
but-
need to get to, but
Yeah.
Councilman Belliston?
Well, I got a quick question. So the fact that it's been now identified by DEQ that there's concerns, does that indemnification kick in to where state trust could just say, you know what, we got to get this out of here. We've got concerns. Here's an engineering report that says there are concerns, and city, you indemnified us, so cough up $2.5 million. I mean, I right now, state trust is proposing that they're mitigating the issue, and they're proposing a way to make it pencil so that they can mitigate the issue. But I mean, I'm just wondering, because there's that agreement in place, state trust couldn't just turn around and say, you know what?
To your point
City,
with
take care of
that,
me.
to your point, it's a valid point, and it's not like we haven't discussed that internally a little bit.
With a smile on his face.
Not something that I want to tell you all the details
He
on,
already
but
thought,
That's
he's
it.
way ahead of me.
Who's on first?
I'm just wondering from our side what we need to be
But
concerned with.
tonight you heard a lot of folks from Ridgeview say, hey, well, what if we just leave that land untouched then and put the park behind it? Which that's not necessarily a bad idea either. I'm not condemning that idea. But what we need to understand is what the school trust lands is. We are here for one purpose. I'm not shirking what that purpose is. I think everybody understands it. It is to make money for the school kids. It starts and stops there. So with that understanding, if we acquire quote unquote development property from the city, but by the city's decree, we can't do anything with it, there's a little bit of a problem there. So again, we just ask the council to consider that, allow us to remove it, allow us to make money on the project, allow us to move forward. Now, having said that, I want to quickly just touch on the park. If we are allowed to do this, we have absolutely no desire to lose our obligation to build a park. We have 100% full intent to build a park. What our preference is, and this is what our board supported, was for us to simply relocate our park obligation from 17B, where we think you would not have a huge need for it, and move it up to parcel 10, where we think there would be a big need for it. So that's what we would like to do. That's what we are proposing. That's what we are requesting of the city. What that park looks like, we want to work very closely with the city to get your input, to understand what the city needs.
So describe that for us. So what does that look like in parcel 10?
So what we would like to see is, whether that's partnering with the city, whether that's partnering with the county, whether it's partnering with a bunch of entities, if you will, we would like to be able to do something that's more significant and that would draw crowds and give a reason for people to come here. Now, I can tell you over the years, we have had a lot of commercial offers on our commercial property here. We've had a lot of well-known food chains and other well-known commercial entities who have come, they've made a deal with Sitla. This is the price we want to buy. We're willing to pay for this use. And we're going down the road, and all of a sudden, 2 months later, we get the word that says, corporate just said, we can't do it. They did the study. There's not enough rooftops. We can't do it. So we just kind of laugh at them and say, have you ever been to the Maverick gas station there? I don't think they're hurting. But that kills that deal all day long. What we are trying to do is try to incentivize people to go to that commercial pad so that there's a reason to be there. And if we can put our park obligation there, we feel it will benefit the community and it will benefit Sienna Hills.
So to that end, that would be the proposal that they're making, is put it on parcel 10F, which is adjacent to, but not part of the stuff that I've been working on. And privately, we would contribute to it as well. So
When you say we, what do you mean by we contribute?
we, as in our development group.
Okay, best.
So it comes at as an expense, but it's expense to have.
That was all the notes that I took. I don't know that I covered
I
everything.
think
If
that
you have
hit
questions
the-
for me.
the high points that you could cover. Other than that, obviously, it was the overnight rental situation, which has been addressed, I think, substantially there. So,
Well, I was just going to ask that if you had anything different you wanted to add on the overnight rental. I mean, because you may have a different position than what's already been presented.
Not necessarily. I can tell you when Jim Raines first approached us about doing nightly rental overlays in 6, 7, and 8, we told him no. And we told him no for about 2 months solid. The reason, and someone referenced parcel 12B, which is the villas, how that failed. We looked at that and absolutely said, no way, we're not going to support you in any way, shape, or form. And when they came through the city process, it was shot down, which we fully endorsed. On this particular request on 6, 7, and 8, what we have learned through a recent traffic study is how people will access these parcels, which, and we have the percentages that show this, but the overwhelming majority of access comes through the commercial areas. And as you start talking to planners, you understand that if you do have a nightly rental overlay where there is the option of other people coming in and they're driving right through your commercial area, the demand on the commercial goes up big time. So we understand that our development partner will do well on the development side of it, but we're also looking at our return on the commercial side of it, which in turn will benefit the city greatly. That was one of the reasons. The other reason is these parcels are so geographically separated from everything else. And that was mentioned tonight, so I don't need to get into that, but you have a lot of open space there. We're going to have trails that will be going through that open space. They're separated, they're isolated, and people are not going through the residential roads to get there. So from our perspective, you're right by the freeway. You have super quick access. You have a good commercial area. It's kind of a home run in our minds.
any other questions for Aaron?
So where you show green was where you were going to move the one missing park into those 2 green areas. Is that now not the case? Now we're going up to 10F and not putting those other 2 green areas in? Or did they already exist?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
They're the ones that are already there.
Yeah.
Okay.
The one that's on Redstone Road, that was put in
Okay, I've
back in
seen it, so-
2006 or 7.
Yep, thank
And
you.
the other one is an HOA park that the city doesn't control.
Okay.
Any other questions for Aaron? Well, you can ask the council and they can ask you if you'd like to address the council. I'll let you come forward one time. It goes against my grain because I said nobody could do it, but here I am.
Well, that's what I like about him. He's so flexible.
Yeah.
We were going to have him speak first, then us, so that might have
That's
answered
why I
questions.
said, well, all your questions
Okay.
come forward and then we'll
Okay.
answer them.
Question to Sitla. Oh, Larry Bybee. If they were to start excavating the landfill to remove it, what happens if there's pockets of methane gas or other things there? And when there's been a landfill, you get rodents and all kinds of other things. If that starts getting dug up, where do you think those things are going to go? Right into Ridge Point.
Well, I wouldn't think there's too many rodents as deep as most of that stuff because it does have a cap, somewhat of a cap on it today.
Just dirt. I
That's what
was
usually they
there
cap
when it
with,
was
is
still a
usually- yeah,
landfill.
clay-
We watched
Clay
them.
is usually what they cap them with. That's generally what is capped on. So it's a
Well,
clay liner. Somewhat.
If you've ever been there since, there's still, if you walk the ravine, you can still see parts of cars sticking out.
Sure.
And things like that. So it's not really capped, so to speak, as in the way they cap the
Well,
regular landfill.
I guess I wouldn't expect if they dug it up, suddenly there's rats go everywhere. I just don't think you'll see that. 'Cause
Well,
it's not
I think
conducive to life down there.
And I think that's exactly where they live. But I'm just wondering what happens to protect the residents from
Any more of your question needs to come forward?
Yeah, I need to know.
Well,
If
okay, the question's been asked.
If it's always been designated a park and he's talking about trying to recoup the money, now they're moving the park to recoup the money. That doesn't
Well-
give us a park that was promised the whole
And
time.
that's been addressed. Thank
Okay.
you. And I didn't hear any new question come out of that needs to be answered. So, anyway, any other discussion from council? If not, I'll.
Here's
entertain a
my
motion to close our public
discussion.
hearing.
Oh, motion to close the public hearing.
Correct.
So moved.
Second.
Motion for approval by Councilman Belliston, second by Councilman Clough.
Ward aye.
Clough, aye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, aye.
So in discussion on this, my hearing what's
Well, I think
going
there
on.
is a discussion there. If Aaron would like to address that to the group, I would be.
Well, I think
I'd be
Aaron
happy
might,
to-
maybe I'll speak for Aaron, and if it's different, I think Aaron answered that question with Councilwoman Granger's question, said, what if you get into that and find some mitigation, or maybe it was you, somebody said, what if you get into that and find some bad stuff?
Correct.
And basically
No,
committed
remove
that
it.
we'll clean it up.
Which I appreciated that very clarification, just bringing that back. So are we moving forward with
Well, I don't
opening
know.
up
Aaron was busy discussing that. I wanted to give him the option to respond if
Are
you
you
want.
good?
To the group. If you want to respond, I'd like to give you the option to do that now.
I don't know that I was clear on the question.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. You were in the middle of responding down there. I said, the way I understood the question was, what if we dig it up and find some bad stuff, which was a question that was already posed? Basically, your answer to that says, we'll take care of it. We're gonna fix it. And
So
you
that's-
already mentioned that the EQ is gonna be on site.
Checking.
And
Yeah,
and the
yes.
protocols that we're talking, I think the question got, that's why I said, I think the
DEQ
question
will
was
be on
answered.
site, and our estimations, those were not low estimates.
Right.
Those were worst case scenario. I mean, we've potholed this probably 6 times in the last couple of years. We're pretty sure we know what's in there.
Okay.
So these are worst case scenarios because we know that we haven't potholed everything. So if there is something that we don't anticipate, or DEQ comes in and says, oh, we did find this level of whatever in there, we have some money in there so that we can take care of that and be okay.
Well, and the other
Thank
concern
you.
on the density, coming back for even a higher density, that there is no higher density.
Right.
So, I mean,
It's
he's
equivalent.
asking for the highest density that he could potentially do in there anyway, which likely won't be hit, so.
Well, if there's a concern that I have on this, I can see why this was split by a planning commission, not because of any particular one thing or another. It's just that it doesn't feel apples to apples. I feel like I've got an apple scenario and an orange scenario put together trying to get a vote for the same. My only concern on this at this moment is it feels like I'm lumping two things together that demand different conditions, different concerns, and different discussion. I don't feel comfortable voting for both of those with a single vote, rather separating them out and voting
Well, you, and
independently
you
on
certainly
those
can
things.
make that in our motions next.
Yeah,
2
so
weeks.
that's
We
that's
certainly-
just in my discussion in this, is I can see where I can see where I'm moved on one over the other, and I don't think my vote would be the same for both.
It'd be similar to what you saw what the planning commission do. I mean, they, in their motion, they separated out and said, we'll approve this,
Yeah.
but not that. You
That's
certainly
just
can do
my
that as
feeling
part of
on
your
it so
motions.
far.
Well, I understand, but it's a PCD amendment, and so it covers the entire PCD.
Correct.
So it's not.
But
like
it's
he
two different
submitted
things within the
application.
PCD.
Well, I understand, but he submits as a PCD amendment. That's why
Correct.
we have.
But I'm just
10
voicing
things
my
in the
concern on it. I know there's a lot on it, but I would feel more comfortable as a councilman if it would be possible to separate them out.
Yeah, I don't think that because the application is one application. You certainly motions, with your motions, you can't separate them in your motions.
Okay, thank you.
All right, item 8, report of officers from our assigned committees. Any reports from your assigned committees?
Oh my goodness, I just came back from a barbecue with the people that are graduating from youth council. Oh my goodness, those kids are fiery and wonderful, and Carmen's backyard's amazing. My goodness. We have the graduation on Mother's Day, so if you're not busy Mother's Day, 5 o'clock, I won't be able to attend it. Councilman Belliston, you're still going to cover that for me?
I'll be there.
You're the best, and Mayor will be there also.
And I'm out of town.
I'm in Arizona, or else I would be there. I would make some time to come over, so that's the whole.
Up north.
It's, should we designate the location? I don't remember the location.
Usually they hold it there at the Covington.
I
in
think it's at the
backyard of
Covington, but I just had that moment
Yeah,
like, I don't
Covington
think I even
Homes,
know because I
usually
told them I couldn't make it. It should be the Covington. So, yeah. Outside of that, I'm looking forward to meeting with the mosquito abatement for the first time tomorrow. So it's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to it with the tick and mosquito blow up lately. They sent out an email that we're going to be talking about that in depth, that there's been some significant changes in our climate that have boosted our infectious vectors.
I've seen that on the news.
Oh my goodness, it is amazing. So not in a good way. It's not good. A lot of new contagious things going out. Well, infectious things being spread through our vectors. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilman.
I asked for, I think probably the next workshop, we can talk about the trails, Little Northern Corridor, Washington Parkway.
Do you want me to make a note of that, or do you want to get with the mayor? on
I
that?
gave it to Roger and
Okay,
me,
so it's already in process.
I think I just want to be sure that I'm headed in a direction that you all can support, and if not, correct my direction, because I don't want to be out ahead of the council saying things that aren't true or are not backed up.
intentions.
So, yeah.
Great.
So that's what we'll do, is just talk about it a little more so I can read what the council wants me to continue to do, because we are getting good support from Brandon, and other people are at least willing to talk. And
Good.
I don't know that it's gonna, the trails are okay. It's just the parkway that's probably a little more controversial for us, but we're gonna continue to try to gather information and get some recommendations. So, okay.
At the next work meeting.
I think so.
Great.
Okay, if nothing else, we'll look for a motion to adjourn. Actually, our city manager's not here, so we won't look for city manager reports. We'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So made by Councilman Clough, second by Councilman Belliston. Any opposed?
Done.
Tried to catch you. Thanks, council.
Thank you. Another day in the neighborhood.
What's that?
Email the
Troy.